We're going to call this meeting to order. This is the City of Brunswick Planning Board meeting, March 9th, 2020. Have a roll call.
Yeah, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Crum, the chairperson Crum is here, so he should start the meeting. I understand that we've got a procedure just in case there was a conflict, but to call the meeting to order, if we could just have the chair do it, I apologize.
Take two. All right. Good evening. Welcome to the Planning Board meeting for March 9th, 2020. We'll begin our agenda tonight with roll call. Okay. Yelitza Checo. Here. Dale Vickers.
Here.
Suzanne Sikora Ludwig. Here. Estelle Tella is absent. Ryan Berger. Here. Diana Lopez is absent. Bob Cardica.
Here.
John Petrolino.
Here.
George Schmidt is absent. Manuel Castaneda. Here. Jeff Crum. Here. Thank you. Jim, would you read the public announcement for us, please? Please be advised that the notice requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been complied with and satisfied, and the annual notice, which gave sufficient notice of the time, place, and conduct of all public meetings of the Planning Board of the City of New Brunswick, has been filed with the City Clerk and placed on an appropriate bulletin board in the lobby of City Hall, 78 Bayard Street, New Brunswick, New Jersey, and has been transmitted to the official newspapers of the City of New Brunswick, namely the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger. Thank you very much. Please stand to salute the flag. Please pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We got item 4, the minutes for the board's February 10th meeting.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Bob, you second. Yelitza Checo.
Yes.
Suzanne Sikora Ludwig.
Yes.
Oh, I apologize. Dale Vickers.
Yes.
Suzanne Sikora Ludwig, yes. Ryan Berger.
Yes.
Bob Cardica.
Yes.
John Petrolino.
Yes.
Jeff Crum. Yes. Thank you. We have one resolution tonight for memorialization. This is ND Hotel Group LLC, 19 State Route 18, Block 710.02, Lot 6.06. This is application PB 2017-05.
Move the resolution.
Second. You were not.
Second.
Oh, yes. Dale wins. Yelitza Checo.
Yes.
Dale Vickers.
Yes.
Suzanne Sikora Ludwig.
Yes.
Brian Berger.
Yes.
Bob Cardica.
Yes.
John Petrolino.
Yes.
Jeff Crum. Yes. Moving to the public hearing section.
You want to call it, and then you can recuse yourself.
We're going to start with public hearings tonight. I am going to recuse myself due to a conflict. I'm going to hand the meeting over to Bob Cardica to chair from this point forward.
And I will also be recusing myself because of conflict.
So if the record reflect that Mr. Crum and Mr. Castaneda will be recusing themselves. You will also be recusing yourself. You have an employment relationship with Rutgers University, is that correct? Thank you.
Okay, moving on to public hearings associated with one agenda item, the Healthcare and Research Pavilion Development Plan. This is for planning board review of the proposed Healthcare and Research Pavilion Development Plan. I just want to make a statement that if persons are going to be presenting, please try to keep your comments brief, because there's a lot of people here. And also, try not to repeat comments that other people said. You can just kind of say, I agree with what the previous statement was made. And of course, be very respectful because, you know, there's a lot of people here and we want everybody to get a chance to comment. So that said,
Mr. Dominguez, if I may swear you in. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to present here today before the planning board is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Thank you. Everyone, welcome to tonight's March 9th Planning Board meeting. Thank you, Planning Board, for this hearing. Tonight we will be presenting the Healthcare and Research Pavilion redevelopment plan. Behind me here, you have a couple of renderings of the elevations and the proposed sky bridges. I hope you can all see. I may recommend that you want to rotate out that way if need be for Brian. And down here, don't have enough easels for everyone, but we have a visual of the blocks that are block and lots that are being.
Mr. Dominguez, if we could just,
Yes,
as we're going through this, we'll mark
So I
things.
will mark this one as A1, A2, and A3. Right now, at the site currently exists the Lincoln Annex and a smattering of office and residential properties. This is a non-condemnation redevelopment plan. As such, there will be no taking under the housing and redevelopment law of any properties on this site. There may be acquisition, there may be eminent domain under other methods that will be open regardless of the adoption of this redevelopment plan, but the school will not be taken via eminent domain, nor will any of the properties here again be taken by the powers of the redevelopment and housing law. So, as you can see here, we're presenting for this Cancer Institute of New Jersey. We're looking at about,
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're looking at about 200 or so feet in height, a little smaller than the medical office building, whose redevelopment plan was amended late last year. That'll go a few blocks up where the surface lot currently is. And if you'd like, we can dive into the meat of the redevelopment plan. So the purpose here is to create more meds space, more student hospital learning, more cancer research, more labs, more advancements in the medical field, while also addressing the typical needs that a hospital would have, small amounts of retail and the like. There's two pretty large expanding sky bridges on the parcel that will interconnect the proposal with existing pieces of the hospital. There's two, one at this corner here, which will connect over here, and the other one will connect here for the board. One of the bridges will connect to this building here, and the other one will connect over here. As you can see, the redevelopment area boundaries, or the redevelopment plan boundaries, because it's not a redevelopment area, is a rehabilitation area. Include some parcels that are currently offices, some that are houses, although many of those are already owned by Robert Wood or other entities in this case. And there may be some that are privately owned. Should they be acquired for this purpose, they will need to be dealt with in a regular acquisition manner and purchased. There will, now again, not be any eminent domain under housing redevelopment law. So the plan's purpose, again, as you can see from the page 5 of your plans, your copies, there is a significant amount of existing medical development in that neighborhood. it fits within the neighborhood context of the area. You have the Rutgers Cancer Institute, Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital, one of, I believe, only 3 level 1 trauma centers in the entire state. PESCNG Children's Specialized Hospital, the Robert Wood Medical School, and Bristol Myers Children's Hospital. Pass through a few pages. The plan is also nearby, adjacent to the transit village area of the city of New Brunswick, thus making it an optimal place for increased density and expansion, as there is significant access to transit both in forms of buses, shuttles, and the Northeast Corridor rail line, which is one of, if not the busiest rail line in New Jersey. The parking requirements of this plan will also be to that effect, as they will be lesser than the expected under the underlying zoning. Here we'll be looking to develop high-rise buildings with varied architectural lines, clustering of like uses, and increased densities in areas where we already have the infrastructure to accommodate them. If you jump over to page 10 of the redevelopment plan in front of you, you have the permitted uses, all of which you'll find are in line with a university hospital and what a cancer center would be. And of course, as a permitted accessory, we're allowing pedestrian bridges to maximize interconnectivity throughout the entire campus. And bulk standards are pretty typical. You may notice, though, that there is a front setback set at. That actually is incorrect. I do apologize. That's why this is good that we're discussing this here before this becomes potentially adopted by ordinance. It will be negative 160 feet instead of negative 100-foot setback. The sky bridges, at least the angular one that you see here, will extend approximately 152 feet across over Somerset Street, and thus so the setback there would need to be more. That's a typo on my part. I do apologize for that. As we continue to advance through the redevelopment plan, we'll talk about the parking strategy and the development. Have it be oriented to maximize the strengths of the mass transit of the area, but also allow the development to use and take advantage of the city's underlying zoning's shared parking facilities. I included that, I brought it today in case anyone had any questions about the parameters of shared parking facilities on-site or off-site. But the idea would be to maximize the utility of these parking spaces. It's not ideal to have parking be underutilized. If you're going to build it, maximize the utility by having shared parking arrangements whenever possible. And if you jump over to page 12, you'll see a very light parking requirement for the specific medical lab uses that you would find typical to the site. We're having 1.2 spaces per 1,000 square feet of general floor area. And for retail and other commercial, 1.5. Again, leaning on the fact that there will be parking constructed at this site, but also that there is access to the Northeast Corridor line, the buses, and the shuttles provided throughout this area. Next couple of pages go into a couple of the nitty-gritty of the outlines of parking facilities, but nothing too demanding. You have on page 14 bicycle parking. That's it ends up being one for every 10,000 square feet of GFA, one parking space. I believe the building is slated for about 200 or so thousand, so that would be 20 parking spaces, 20 bike racks throughout the facility. Now for off-street loading, this is one of the places where I did make a modification to allow, this would be at the bottom of page 14, I made a modification today. This wouldn't have been in the plans that you received last week. The loading areas shall not be subject to the bulk requirements of this plan and may encroach into the right-of-way as needed to best allow the new facility to be able to load and unload. The site plan review, should this plan be adopted, when the project is presented, will have to address that and ensure and present to the board that to the satisfaction of the board, that the changes that were proposed are acceptable. On page 15, we have signage items, particularly awnings and canopies and marquees. We'll start with there is a permission here for it to encroach into the right-of-way, particularly to allow people on foot or people being dropped off to be able to enter the building at the entrances without being exposed to the elements. So there would be an overhang not to encroach more than 15 feet and be at least 8 feet from grade above you. The setback requirements of the plan will not apply to this, and that is something that was added in the first line of that section. So that's slightly amended, and I included the words canopies and marquees throughout the paragraph, which I'm remiss to have failed to include in the first place. You have the pedestrian bridge. There is currently a small pedestrian bridge, I believe, here, that exists currently, and right now, so for the members of the audience, connects right here. It currently has sort of a wrap signage around the two facades. The concept would be that that these sky bridges would be permitted to do the same should they choose. They'd have the wide ability here to go full, small, as long as they don't exceed the height and the floor of the sky bridges. So you don't have like a giant billboard that exceeds it on all sides and looks thoughtful. There will be blade signs, particularly with the goal of wayfinding, particularly for the parking facility that is intended to go on this site. And on the section under wall signs, there was a typo. It should be maximum sign size is equal to 10% of facade area, not maximum facade size is equal to 10% of facade area, because that wouldn't make any sense, so I do apologize for that. So it's maximum sign size equal to 10% of facade area. We jump over to page 19. The right-of-way improvements section was also slightly amended to cut out the first sentence, so it will strictly read as, on-street loading areas for the operation of a building constructed pursuant to this plan may encroach into the city's right-of-way, subject to planning board review. Obviously, through site plan review, should it get that far. We jump over to page 21. We'll see the relationship to the redevelopment plan, the local objectives. It matches up very well with the city's goal and city master plan. The concentration of major medical facilities, cultural facilities, improved inter and municipal traffic movement, and this encourages transit use, encourages shuttle use, bus, trains, diversification of the uses by encouraging more research and R&D, is that something that is incredibly important in the modern economy, and particularly when you're attempting to change and cure cancer. That doesn't really matter. Let's jump ahead to the next page, page 22.
I'll grab this.
And the provisions to meet other state and local objectives. As you can see here, there are significant items here where it matches up very well with the state plan, state development and redevelopment plan from 2001, particularly promoting development and redevelopment in a manner that is consistent with sound planning and where infrastructure provided at private expense and with reasonable expenditure of public funds. This is a very good fit for that. The reduction of sprawl, particularly the densification of this site, massively reduces sprawl and coordinates a site for medical facilities. And as you can see, it's a whole page. You jump over to the next page, you still have another half page of issues where it lines up with the state plan. It substantially complies with the Middlesex County Master Plan, and even Franklin, not even in our county, but our next door neighbor, significantly benefits from proximity to Rutgers and Robert Wood and St. Peter's hospitals here in New Brunswick. This is also to their benefit. As we jump in here to section 8, page 28, 24, I apologize. As I said earlier and opened the event, no property in this plan area is going to be acquired via eminent domain under housing and redevelopment law. This is a rehabilitation plan, or a redevelopment plan for rehabilitation area. There is no designation of redevelopment area here, and thus those powers are not given to the designated redeveloper or the redevelopment agency or the city to condemn under the housing and redevelopment law. As such, in certain cases, the redeveloper or the redevelopment authority may acquire by purchase property should the need arise. The condemnation under housing and redevelopment law will not be allowed. Left section 9 blank for fun. The designated redeveloper will have to clear the area should they be chosen and want to effect this plan. They'll have to, at their own expense, demolish and construct. The parameters of the redeveloper designation are over on page 25. They'll need to provide a preliminary site plan, documentation, evidence, and financial responsibilities, the projected total development cost for the redevelopment project, and an estimated timeline for start and completion of said development. We jump over to page 26. We'll see that this is subject to, the site plan will be subject to the planning board's review. This plan will allow the developer, should they want to seek and petition this board for C variances, so typical bulk variances that deviate from this plan. And, but they will not be allowed to pursue D variances, which would send them to the zoning board. In such cases that a D variance would be necessary, the designated redeveloper would have to come back before this board and request an amendment to this redevelopment plan and explain why they need such an amendment. And as such, in just last couple of pages, again, as any other redevelopment plan, it's in effect for 30 years. There will be permitted temporary land uses for public recreation and public parking on the site, farmers markets and the like, in the interim while we wait for the development should that need arise. And I know that you've all had a chance to review the bulk of this plan minus the, hopefully you'll agree, very minor edits that I mentioned today. And I'm now open for questions from the board.
Dan, can you please state specifically what it is the planning board is being asked to consider tonight and what the implications are of approving or approval or disapproval of this redevelopment plan?
Certainly. So this redevelopment plan is before the planning board tonight for advice and consent. They will be looking to see that it conforms with the city's master plan and with these all these other master plans. And they will also be looking to add any comments to it that they see fit. Should the board approve, the plan will then be put before the city council for adoption by ordinance, which takes at least 2 council meetings. Should the board vote against the redevelopment plan, the city council may, at their discretion, choose to still adopt the redevelopment plan with their own rationale for why they are deciding to disregard the mentions of the planning board. So this is sort of a step 0 on the development side. I know that there's been a lot of things that have happened with the Board of Ed and other entities. This is somewhat separated from that in the sense, in the sense that This redevelopment plan can be an overlay zone here, be adopted, and this building doesn't get built, the school never gets sold. None of these items are held on whether or not this plan is adopted. This plan is simply a skeletal foundation for this project should it proceed.
Okay, another question. How, you stated that this redevelopment plan is substantially in conformance with the master plan. Could you expand on that? Because the zoning map is currently zoned as residential. Of course, this would require a change in zoning, correct, to
Well,
hospital, industrial, institutional?
well, so certainly, the site currently right now is in fact an R5A, single and two-family residential zone, although there are parcels already on and in that block that already are departures from that zone. This doesn't change the zone, this creates an overlay zone that only is applicable to a designated redeveloper should they pursue this avenue. Now, with that said, it conforms with the master plan in the sense that it conforms with density and the clustering of the medical uses in this area and the natural expansion of the hospital as a cluster node in that area. So in those senses, it fits within those parameters, as well as encouraging transit and discouraging automobile use in the downtown area of the city of New Brunswick.
And you also indicated that there would be no exercise of eminent domain, no condemnation associated with this, so that these businesses and residents would have to be willing sellers.
Under the housing and redevelopment law, yes. So for the purposes of this plan, there would have to be willing sale of these parcels to the redeveloper for the purposes of constructing this project.
And that includes the school? That includes the school?
That does include the school, yes.
Nice presentation, Mr. Dominguez. Thanks very much. Can you help me understand what was the impetus for this proposed redevelopment plan? I mean, clearly there's a tremendous amount of community interest in how we move forward. And without getting too far outside the scope of what we're being asked to consider today, I personally would like to understand what was the foundational concept that brought us to where we are today. Has there been any specific studies with regards to what this would mean to the community going forward in terms of additional resources required, additional jobs that are created, things of that nature? Again, without looking at council for guidance if we get too far afield.
Certainly, there are several hundreds of jobs that will be provided at this site, including running across the gamut of income ranges. We're going to make sure that we hire several New Brunswick folks here at this facility. Now, granted, this is the impetus for this change is that the hospital finds this to be an adequate and optimal site to locate their cancer institute. It's across the street from the cluster of the campus. It's easily interconnected via these pedestrian crossways that will allow for easy travel of patients and visitors from one side to the other and integrate the entire hospital as one major unit while creating research and development jobs, which will be high paying and create spillover benefits to the rest of the city of New Brunswick.
Is any consideration given to the vacant lot that currently constitutes the former Farron deck?
No.
Is this going to create any additional drain on municipal resources? I mean, obviously it's a place for jobs and for scientific and medical discovery, but it can't all be upside, right?
We don't expect that this will create any additional strain on existing resources, particularly with the creation of a new parking deck to meet the demand of most of the parking that will be on this site. The shared parking arrangements will allow the other parking needs to be met at different sites People will walk, they will be encouraged to take the train, they'll be encouraged to take the shuttles. And so in general, no, there will be no additional strains on the city's resources, and many of the resources that may be strained, the developer will have to potentially produce improvements, much as they're already going to potentially produce $25 million toward a new school to offset the loss of this school. So yes, the developer is offsetting a lot of the burdens in other ways already.
So, obviously touched on the $64,000 question. So, is there a specific plan for the relocation of the Lincoln Annex? Do we have a time frame? You mentioned the dollar amount that's allocated.
Sure. So originally we had referred 2 plans to this board. One for this site for the Cancer Institute and one for 131/121 Jersey Avenue, where there was an original idea to have the school relocated to and construct a new school. Since then, the Board of Education has created a working group and are mulling at least one other site, which is 50 Jersey Avenue. They may be mulling other sites. I'm unaware of who's on the board, on the working group and the parameters and what they're looking at, except for those 2 sites. And so we are waiting for an end result of that review. I expect it sometime at the end of this month, and the plan is to have a redevelopment plan before this board for that site at the April Planning Board meeting.
Would it be appropriate to consider the redevelopment plan for that, for 131 Jersey Avenue first, given the potential impact on the community that's obviously here? So that we have it, so that everybody has a sense for how we're going to handle this. It's just probably a subjective question as opposed to an objective.
Well, we have, the Board of Ed is mulling those multiple sites. It makes sense to let them review those sites, but also we have this ready to go now, and realistically speaking, there's not going to be a move without all the pieces in place. So this redevelopment plan can't move forward without a new site for the school. So whether or not we adopt this or not, we cannot move forward on the other redevelopment plan without this one in parallel. But we can have this as one meeting and have that as its own separate meeting once we have a site recommended to us by the Board of Ed's working group.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Just to add a bit of, I guess, fog to the question that you asked. The rehabilitation law, the municipal land use law, which is chapter 40 of the New Jersey statutes, and the local redevelopment and housing law, which is 40A of the New Jersey statutes, so the governing statutes, when it comes to this type of a plan. When there's a referral from the governing body, this board has limited this to the amount of time that we have to act on that. And as Dan had said earlier, it's really the advice and consent of the planning board that the governing body is looking for. It's not dispositive. The governing body can either act on the plans, they can reject the plans, they can take some of the plan or some of the recommendations that are made, or none of them. It's up to them. There is some expertise that we have here. So in terms of whether this should come first before some other component comes first, we're controlled, we're limited by the municipal land use law. We have to follow the law, and as your lawyer, I'm going to advise you that we have to consider this plan. The larger development project, if it's an off-site development, is considered independently as well. The governing body has exclusive province, and the Board of Education in this case, which will consider where it may relocate a school. We'll take that into consideration when they make their decision as to where they'd like to place their school. Since we're not proceeding today with eminent domain, this is what's important here. The developer, in this case Robert Wood Johnson, who would be the redeveloper, could acquire the properties on their own without any sort of input or without any sort of advice or even some restrictions from this planning board. And they can use whatever methods they feel appropriate, including going to the zoning board and seeking variances to build whatever they want there. This is an ability for the governing body and for this planning board to act in concert with the redevelopment once there has been already been a finding that this is an area that qualifies as an area in need of redevelopment or an area in need of rehabilitation. Once that determination has been made, the next step in the process determine what would we like to see there, what's the best use, what would be best for the community, for the developer in this case, and for the overall impact that it will have on the city. So again, to focus back on what we're looking at now is whether under the municipal land use law and the local housing, redevelopment housing law, whether we have any recommendations as a planning board that we'd like to pass on to the governing body in this plan that Dan's Mr. Dominguez, I'm sorry, has provided an overview of. I don't know if that confused everyone more. I apologize if it did.
Well, what I'm hearing though is that we can attach recommendations associated with.
You could certainly say, look, I would prefer this happen or that happen, but it really has to be limited to what's in the plan.
Yeah.
And again, the board doesn't have the authority to enact, this is done by ordinance, by the way, and as the planning board knows, the planning board doesn't have the authority to enact ordinances. Only the governing body can do that. So we can make a recommendation that they consider something to adopt with their ordinance as well. But it's not controlling on the governing body.
And Councilor, can you help me understand what is the implication of if we do not pass this site, or this redevelopment, excuse me, if the board votes on balance to reject?
Well, that's the recommendation that goes back to the governing body. The governing body can still act to go forward with it. Now, they've sent it to us because they want recommendations within the plan.
Thank you.
So you, Dan, you did a really good job of kind of describing exactly, with the input we just received, what it is that we are voting on this evening. But of course, it's very difficult to separate that from the implications of this, and as evidenced by everybody present in the room here. Is there, and again, this may be a question which is not relevant, but is there any way to proceed with both the school approval and construction, relocation of the school, as well as this development project without the displacement that would be involved for students currently at the annex?
No, it's fine. To the best of my knowledge, there would be a required displacement, I believe, to the swing space. I think it's called Pathways now? Pathways? Which was constructed circa 10, 15 years ago. It's a pretty nice school on the inside. I've been there a few times for events. Pretty impressed with it. A lot of people say it does look like a warehouse, but looks can be deceiving. On the inside, it is a wonderful school.
With carpet and dirt.
That does not make it a redevelopment plan. I mean, that does not make it a warehouse. It is in an area with warehouses, but it itself is not a warehouse.
Let's try to
Ladies and gentlemen,
keep ourselves in order here tonight, please. I would really appreciate it. We want to hear everybody's input tonight.
And to add to Mr. Dominguez's comment, and I guess also to address your question, we're limited with the authority. The planning board is limited as to the authority that it has to act and what it can do. It would be improper for this board to say we will only act if an outside condition is met first, because this board just isn't empowered. It doesn't have the authority to do that.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that the municipal land use law and the local redevelopment housing law is specific and binding on this board is because you don't want a rogue board. You want to make sure that you follow the law. As your attorney, I'm going to advise you that you must follow the law, and that may not be something that you can attach as a condition.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board?
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are we ready for public comment?
Yeah, I guess I have to jump back to
Mr. Chairman, if I could just go over what the board rules generally are on public comment. I know that you've already stated this, but just for everyone's benefit, generally the board rules are that the folks that want to speak, that it not be repetitive, but so they can give other people a chance as well. As we've already heard one outburst, and I understand passions are high, but we can't understand 5 or 6 or 20 people talking at the same time. So if you could limit it to show respect to the person that's talking, if that person is the only one that's talking. And if people are going to say essentially the same thing, but they want to get their name on the record to say, I agree with what Mr. So-and-so or Ms. So-and-so had just said, that would be advisable as well.
Thank you.
Stand here.
I have questions.
You need to come up and,
She'll swear you in.
one at a time. Thank you.
Hello, my name is,
Please state your name, spell your last name, and
yes, my name is Juan Gonzalez, Gonzalez. I live at 11 Cotter Drive in Brunswick, and I'm a professor of journalism at Rutgers University.
And do you swear to tell the, and affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please proceed. Juan, and I can be able to hear you.
Yes. Okay,
Mr. Gonzalez, I'm sorry, I didn't get, if you could just put your address, it doesn't have to be your home address, you can put your work address.
no, I put my home
I'm
address.
sorry, I
Sorry,
didn't.
we're not talking.
I apologize.
Okay, before I make my remarks, I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Dominguez about his presentation. Number one, you said, how many parking spaces are going to be in this garage?
I apologize, I'm providing this lady.
Roughly, how many parking spaces?
At the estimated rate of 1.2 per thousand, we'd be looking at, I think, I don't remember exactly, but between, I want to say it's between 200 and 400 spaces.
Between 200 and 400 spaces, and you say that's going to reduce traffic in downtown New Brunswick.
It's going to meet the demand of the parking that the building will
Fine.
require.
My second question is, I didn't realize this when you hold up this map. You're
Yes.
not only seeking to take the school, you're seeking to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 private residences.
Now, for clarity's sake, many of those parcels are already offices or owned by Robert Wood Johnson. Any properties there would have to be acquired, not by eminent domain
I
under the
heard that
housing
part
law.
of it,
Yes,
I heard that part of it. I just want to
Yeah,
be
so they'll have to
clear
buy it.
that this is not just taking the school, it's taking half the block.
yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there's no taking of any property.
Oh, no taking. I'm just saying that Robert Wood Johnson
I
is
just
taking,
wanted
not
to
the
be
eminent
clear.
domain is being used.
Well,
Okay.
taking has a legal connotation here that's
Let me
not.
say that a couple of weeks ago, because I've been, as a journalist, I've covered urban affairs for many years. A couple of weeks ago, I sat down with Mr. Palladino, the head of DEFCO, who's spearheading this plan, and I asked him a simple question. Why is it that you have to have this school? Couldn't you build someplace else, your cancer pavilion? And he told me, yes, the perfect spot would have been the garage behind the children's hospital. That would have been a much better site to build this on. And I said, well, why not leave the school and just tear down the garage? And he said, well, we spent $60 million building that garage. And I said to him, well, you're offering $55 million to build a new school, so just take your own land, knock the garage down, and build your school there. You won't have to bother the kids at the school at all. He said, that's an interesting idea, but you obviously have detailed plans on what you want to do. So I want to deal with the issue of the school, the so-called replacement school, which obviously has to be resolved before you can decide on the building, on the closing and demolishing of Lincoln Annex.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, sorry to interrupt. The school itself, the off-site improvement to another lot isn't part of what this presentation and what this board is considering. So certainly you can make whatever comment he wishes, but this board can't consider the off-site improvements that are not related to this project.
Well, that's fine. Then consider my comments education of the planning board members as they're considering what kind of conditions they might want to, and I understand you as a lawyer telling them don't do that, right? But they have their own independent minds. Lawyers aren't always right, okay? So the site at 131 Jersey Avenue that Mayor Cahill, DEFCO, and Robert Wood Johnson Hospital offered on February 4th as land for a new Lincoln Annex Public School is far more contaminated than the public has been told. Our city leaders were either negligent in proposing this site, or they thought the parents and community would never discover the truth. Mayor Cahill has claimed, especially in a video he produced last month about the Cancer Center project, that the Jersey Avenue site has, quote, this is according to the mayor, has already been cleared to the standard that medical offices require, but he has not said a word about how contaminated that site is. Well, we in the Coalition to Defend Lincoln Annex Oprah the State Department of Education, and they sent us hundreds of pages of documents about what's been going on in that site for the last 15 years, right? The land at Jersey Avenue is currently not safe for school or residential use or for any use that requires the disturbing of the soil. According to those records, the soil and the groundwater beneath the site contain high levels of arsenic, lead, and copper, as well as half a dozen known cancer-causing chemicals called PAHs, or polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons, which are produced from the burning of coal and petroleum and wood. Extremely high levels, far above either residential, school standards, or industrial standards, that's still there after 10 years of the owner and even the city trying to clean up that site. They cannot get it decontaminated. So bad that in 2014, the state required a deed restriction on the property to notify anybody who could consider buying the property that it's contaminated, and they ordered the owner to put a concrete cap on the entire 5 acres so that gases couldn't escape and that further water could not get into the ground to leach all of that contamination into the underground stream that runs there. So this is an extremely contaminated site, and the idea that the mayor could say, well, we can clean it up. Well, the state is requiring anybody who owns that land to monitor the contamination for the next 30 years. Not 1, 2, 3 years, 30 years. So that means that if a school was built on that site, the school system would have to monitor the site for decades. So we think it's madness to even consider that site. Now, you mentioned now that there's a 50 Jersey Avenue site that just happens to be owned by Jack Morris, chairman of Robert Wood Johnson. So Mr. Morris might actually make some money off the deal at the same time that he's building a cancer treatment center at the over the school. So we think that it is madness to go ahead with this plan, segment it over here, as if what happens to the children who are displaced by this plan is of no concern to this board. I mean, that may be legally possible, but it's morally wrong.
Yes.
And you should know better. And you should know better. The only way that site, 131 Jersey Avenue, could be made uncontaminated is by digging down 35 feet of soil over 5 acres of land, carting all that soil away, refilling it again, and then establishing a concrete barrier in the foundation of that area that is strong enough to prevent any gases or any contamination from rising through the concrete. That's an extremely expensive task. It's an extremely long-term task. So I urge you, do not let yourself get segmented. Oh, you only are responsible for this, and the board's only responsible for this, and everyone's only responsible for a part, but what about the whole picture? What are you doing? How many more people are you going to push out of downtown New Brunswick? How many more people? Have you done an environmental impact statement, or a study of what this construction would do to downtown?
That would be for the developer to do as part of the site plan.
Oh, and so you're going to pass everything before you find out what the actual environmental impact will be?
They have to provide that as part of the site plan. We can't do that review until that part happens. So
But
no.
you're asking the planning board to to approve this without getting an environmental
I'm
impact
asking
statement?
the planning board to set parameters for development on this site, not the nitty-gritty of that part that has nothing to do with the redevelopment plan. That is part of the site plan approval if and when a designated redeveloper would come through with this presentation for the board.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Thank you. I'm
there may
sorry.
be a misunderstanding that the public may have. You're not approving the development of this project, just like you're not approving where a school may be
I
relocated.
thought that was made clear.
I thought
Yeah.
that's too, doesn't seem it.
Did you want to mark, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you while you were, I saw that you were showing some photos, Mr. Chairman, if I may. You were showing some photographs. Did you want to mark them and then have them entered into the record? That's all I wanted to find out.
Actually, I'll hold on to them. I'm making sure they be put on Facebook so the whole entire city can see them.
That's fine. The problem is once you show it to the board and you ask the board to consider those, then it has to be part of the record.
Well, okay, then I surely will donate them. That's usually what I do at city council, so poor Lovely knows who I am.
And if you need those, if you have their digital photographs?
Oh, yes, I can put them on CD, also anything you
just
like.
CD? Okay.
Because
Yep.
I have over 200 of them.
That's probably the more efficient way to do it if you want to put them on a CD. And did you want to just pass that up so they can look at them as well?
Okay, but I would still like to show the art, like in the
Understand.
begin. Hello, my name is Danielle Moore. I have been an activist throughout making New Brunswick safe for over 20 years.
And I'm sorry, if you can raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is fortunate, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And if you could just say your name again for the record and your address.
Danielle Moore, 333 Somerset Street.
Thank you.
Hi, once again, due to where I say this school means a lot, due to where if anyone shall remember, this used to be St. Peter's High School. Wow, it was the smartest school then. Okay, now it's Lincoln Ethnic School, different staff. It is still one of the smartest schools, highest test scores in New Jersey. So it's not about the staff, it's also to show you like location really means something. Wow, this building, it must be very comfortable to keep our students very smart as they are. And one thing I say, due to where I'm very disappointed how anyone would be able to approve to put a school here, due to where by statewide, Joyce County, which flows with Jersey Avenue, it's a flood zone. Every time it pours, it rains so hard, it floods there. The city or the county could never stop it from flooding, and every time it floods, it mixes with the sewage there, due to where, you have over 4 drains, sewer drains there that you
If I
cannot.
may, Mr. Chairman, we are going through some photographs, and this would be of the site that's the subject of tonight's hearing?
Yes.
Okay, because I thought this was about another...
With the site, 131 Jersey Avenue.
Okay, that's not what this board is considering today. So, I mean, you could certainly make whatever comments you wish about that.
Well, please do. I still would like to have the speak to you due to where you will be voting on things.
I won't be voting on it.
Well, excuse me. Well, like I said, just please let me continue to speak. Thank you.
Can we mark those then, please? So the board can consider?
I will let you receive them afterwards. Can I just continue going through what I was doing?
I need to mark those in order for the board.
Well, I will let you mark them, okay, when I get finished speaking, please. I said I will donate them to you. I have no problem with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. You don't want the public to see the truth? You don't want the public to see the truth?
Now, we have a procedure.
Well, like I
so
said,
that
I'll
we can
make
actually
sure
make the
that
record.
I will get them to you, no problem.
We have a procedure so we can make the record complete and understandable. If you're referring to a picture, a photograph, which is why I asked Mr. Dominguez to pre-mark those 3 photographs or 3 exhibits. If he's referring to a specific one, that he can say, I'm referring to A1 or A2 or A3, so the record's clear. There will be a transcript of this, an audio recording of this that's being made. It's hard to tell what photograph you're talking about unless we have a reference. I'm not doing it to confuse you or to frustrate you, but just to make the record clear.
On the back.
So, okay, one question so we can get through this. Do you want the pictures or do you want me to put them on CD or just like you just asked the engineer? Do you want the pictures?
Pictures would be easier. It would be less expensive, I'm sure, rather than printing those up again. if you want to give us a disc and we can just assemble them in the same order as the
Okay.
pictures.
Okay, okay, maybe as I'm doing it, maybe someone can mark it as I'm doing it, then I know which order to donate the pictures back to you. Is that okay? So I don't have to be interrupted again, is that okay?
However you'd like to do it, I just want to mark them, that's all.
Okay, that's what I'm asking you, as I'm passing them to her, will she mark them? Okay, thank you, that's all I'm saying. Due to where this land has been contaminated since May 6th of 2011. And as I was saying, due to where no place you have over all sewage drains. Due to where at the time, it was Councilmember Sapora Lovely and Councilmember Escobar at the city council meeting 4 weeks ago said, wow, everything would be cleaned up. Well, until last week, until I came and showed these pictures, there's no way you can clean any of this up.
I just have to stop you again, because this is the second time that you missed.
It's on video. It's on city council video.
What I said at that council meeting was that the development would not go forward unless the site was cleaned up. That's completely different from what you're saying now. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but they're two completely different statements. And I just want that to be made clear. I didn't say, oh, it will be cleaned up, it will be this. I said the development could not move forward unless the site was cleaned. That's what I said.
And like I said, the area filled with warehouses due to where not a location for a school to go. And maybe we speed it up a little quicker, I'd be closer to you. Like I said, where you have drains underneath, you cannot, this is connected all the way to North Brunswick where they cannot be removed. It says sanitary sewer. Like I said, none of these can be removed. No place for a school to go. This is connected all the way to North Brunswick, where the city couldn't even handle doing. Like I said, every time it floods, it rains, it brings plenty of garbage down. Not an area for a school. Due to with the stream there, like I said, more sewage. No one cannot take these out. Every time, how much garbage comes down here, please. Wow, then let's talk about all the homeless you have living back there. Do you think you're really going to stop them from coming on back there? Please, like I said, wow, I even have over 200 pictures. See, one thing I would love to say, we're sure Channel 12 and Mayor Cahill had everyone fooled. They only took the picture of the front of 131 Jersey Avenue. They didn't go all the way around to the other side to show the people what's all back there. Like I said, I couldn't print them all, but I have over 200 pictures to show what it's like on the other side, even with the graveyard, how many homeless are living back there. And my last but least, due to where, like I said, Ms. Sapora Lovely, council, I'm used to calling her council, due to where she knows me from city council, I do deal with safety issues, where they're saying that the children would have to walk to 131. I will tell you, at this location, French Street and Sanford Street, which is right on the other side of where the school is, last year you had 8 major crashes crashing this guardrail down. I mean, how many times? Like I said, if you do need them, I have several pictures, over thousands of pictures to show how many times this has been crashed. Not a place for kids to be walking across. I just had last year had the county remove the crosswalk at French and Alexander due to where it's not safe. It's impossible for you to cross when the light changes green, so you can't cross there. Wow, I have so many pictures to show what car accidents due to where what? This is French and Saddam Street. How many times the cars have crashed into the store there? My point is, this is not a good thing for the kids to even be walking to school, which the Board of Education did say it is too dangerous. And even if you do change it to 50 Jersey Avenue, wow, who wants their kids walking to school in the morning? What? Beginning of every month, all you do is see people OD laying right there in that park. Would you want your kids to be around that? Please do think about it. Just take a ride over there. Wow, you know what? It's the beginning of the month. Wow, you see all the heads down. How many overdoses are over there? Please, you wouldn't want your child to go through this. Please, I hope, like I said, it's just too dangerous. I would read to you what? Over 500 pictures of what I just said. Of each site, it's not school zone. And please, due to where I just found out the information, I will give someone to talk, but due to where the $55 million that Robert Wood Johnson is offering for the school, that doesn't even that's not the money to even clean up Jersey Avenue. That's just for the school. So please, and like I said, I've been lied to several times, even under video, so please, no one, do not believe what you hear them say, because even under video, how the city has lied before, said they're going to do this, and you didn't do what you said. Please do take a look at city council meetings.
State your name, spell your last name, and your address.
Marge Kerber, Kerber, 2 Comstock Street in New Brunswick.
I just want to remind everyone that, try to the extent you can to keep.
Oh, I'm going to ask
comments
questions
brief.
about this.
That's,
Yeah, I am
no, I
a little
meant
bit
just
upset about it.
so that everyone gets a chance to speak.
Okay, I will, don't worry. I mean, well, Charlie knows me, I tend to go on, I'll try not to.
Do you swear and affirm to tell the truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I have been a resident of New Brunswick for over 25 years. I'm also a taxpayer, okay? And I've seen a whole lot of stuff go on in 25 years, believe me, but this is the worst thing that you people have ever done, okay? You're displacing 750 Latino kids, okay, that can walk to their school, and their parents can walk to the school and attend events and conferences, and you're going to bust them. And I know you don't think it's a warehouse, but I'm sorry. I know teachers that work in there. But anyway, I don't want to get into that. My questions are, has there been a traffic study done on this?
That is something that the designated redeveloper would have to perform at such a time as they present their site plan.
Okay. Do the residents of this area know about this?
The designation of a rehabilitation redevelopment plan requires no public notice.
Okay, so they don't know about it. So these people that are living in these homes for God knows how many years are just going to be told they have to sell it?
They don't
And what
have
if
to
they don't
sell
want
it.
to?
They
What if
don't
they
have
don't
to.
want to?
They don't have to.
What is the hospital going to do?
Yeah.
They have to figure it out, but they can't force them to sell the property.
You
Sure.
have to be willing to sell.
Right.
Right.
So they don't even know about it. So that's another secret part of this whole project.
Well, no, they
There's
may
secret
not.
press conferences, secret Board of Ed meetings, secret committees, this new committee, secret committees. I mean, this whole thing is done in secret. And to me, when that's done in secret, that means that it's not playing fair, okay? It's not. And you work for the city?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I wouldn't have known that. But anyway, transit hub. That was a very interesting. It's going to connect to the transit hub, which is presently a ditch, a big ditch.
No, I said the transit village,
Which
which
is
is a
gonna-
designation of the whole downtown area, not just
Not just the ditch.
the ditch.
Okay, but it includes the ditch.
Yes, and then some, yes.
I don't know where the rest of the transit village is going to go. But anyway, I just have a real problem with my tax dollars going someplace that I don't think is appropriate. Let's go back to this picture here. You said it was how many feet tall?
About 200 feet tall.
Okay, and here's the church over here. Look at how small that church is compared to this building. And that church steeple is pretty tall. So you're saying this is only going to be 200 feet. This in a residential neighborhood, which is already congested, okay? Ambulances can't even get down, Albany Street anymore, okay? And this is going to solve that problem. I don't think so, okay? I have, just as an FYI, I have written a letter to the doctor, the head of the Cancer Institute, because I am a donor to them. I've been a donor to them since my sister died 13 years ago, okay? And a fair amount of money, and I have not going to give them a penny anymore because they're a disgrace. You guys are a disgrace. If you approve this, you should be ashamed of yourselves. All these kids have a nice neighborhood school, and as this gentleman said, it can be built elsewhere. I've even looking at, the Robert Wood Johnson Fitness Center. The first floor is empty, okay? Use that, and then connect that to a ditch, or whatever, I mean, there's plenty of places that they can build this. They can go up. Why can't they just go up? Well, sky is the limit. But why do they have to take these 750 Latino kids? Believe me, if they were white, this wouldn't be happening. We wouldn't be here. I know that's a fact. But there's so much collusion. I like that word, don't you? Collusion. In the city of New Brunswick. Everybody's on everybody else's board. So you have so much conflict of interest, but it doesn't matter. You know, you should get to, I'm sorry, I said that I wasn't going to go on, and I am, because I get riled up with this stuff, all right? There's going to be plenty of parking. Sure there is. Robert Wood Johnson doesn't have enough parking now, and they promised parking. They promised access to different streets, and they've never gotten that, okay? So what makes you think that they're going to clean this, they're going to pay for the school, clean up the site, okay? Who's going to pay for the buses?
No, they're supposed to pay for that as well, but even though this has nothing to do with the schools right now, that is the busing is part of that plan.
No, I'm just talking about the buses that exist, NJ Transit and the city shuttles and the MCAT. There are no additional
I was
shuttles.
talking about the school, the one you're going to be, but that's
I
what
apologize.
I'm sorry.
They're not gonna be bused though, they have to walk.
What building is this?
I think that's just part of the rendering. It's whatever's on that
Oh,
block.
okay.
Yeah,
Which right now I think is a house.
it may very well be. I'm not exactly
Okay,
sure.
so, you know, the gentleman that lives there is going to be real happy with this, I'm sure. But anyway, I've said enough, but, for tonight, anyway. But, you know, I just think that, again, you should be ashamed of yourselves to even consider this, to even consider moving those children. And I know you don't care about the Latino population in the city. I know that for a fact, too, okay? But maybe you should start, because they're getting larger, they're going to be the majority, and the next thing you know, see ya.
Yes, Lilia Fernandez, 11 Carter Drive, New Brunswick. Fernandez, Fernandez. 11 Carter Drive. And I'm a professor at Rutgers.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. And I would appreciate all of our elected officials doing the same. Yeah. So I'm really impressed by all the forethought and careful attention that has gone into this plan for the new Rutgers Cancer Institute of New Jersey. But I wonder why there has not been this much forethought and careful attention to the plan of the replacement school of the 760 children that will potentially be displaced by these plans. So my first question is, why are the current facilities so inadequate that there's a need for a new site, a new building, when RWJ Barnabas has only something like a 72% bed occupancy rate in New Jersey? Can someone answer that? Can you answer that, Mr. Dominguez, or someone else?
I cannot, no. That made the redevelopment plan. I don't know the specifics of the operations of Robert Wood Johnson Hospital. So no, I cannot comment on that.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure the public knows that RWJ Barnabas has only a 72% bed occupancy rate. That means that almost a third of their beds are empty on any given day. So why the desperate, urgent need for this brand new building? Secondly, why can't the Aspire building that went up not too long ago, further in this direction, for the record, I'm pointing to the right on Exhibit A1. Why can't the Aspire apartment building be demolished and used as a site for the Cancer Institute, and those adults be told that they need to move out and relocate until appropriate replacement housing is built for them? Can you answer that, Mr. Dominguez, or anyone else?
I'm unaware that that site was ever under consideration for this project.
Okay, why can't the parking garage, which Mr. Gonzalez mentioned, next to the Children's Hospital, be torn down and used as the site for this new cancer center?
Same answer.
Okay. Is anyone on the planning board concerned about the fact that with the demolition of Lincoln Annex School, Lincoln School will be the only school left in the neighborhood? Is the plan to completely displace the residents of this community and push them further away from the downtown and from the city center? Because it's becoming increasingly apparent to the residents, to half of the city which is Latino, a large part of it which is immigrant, and you may not think are people who are important or relevant or who matter, but people are becoming aware that it's not just about Lincoln Annex School, it's about the larger ongoing gentrification and redevelopment plans that continue to push working people out of their homes and out of their community. Brunswick, and I am a taxpayer. However, so are all the renters in this city, because they pay taxes and the rents that they give their landlords every month. So there's no reason that we should discredit or discount their input and their opinions and their perspectives on any city development matters, okay? Now, the woman before me made a very good point. Why can't that abandoned grocery store in RWJ Fitness Center be used as the site for this new facility?
I'm sorry, the abandoned grocery store?
Yes.
Well, everything's
Well-
gone inside.
Yeah, well, it's a very small facility. It wouldn't be able to fit maybe a quarter of this building. But it wasn't ever under consideration, but it is actually about a quarter of the square footage. I think that place is 49,000 square feet. This is about 200,000 square feet. So it wouldn't be able to meet the needs of that facility.
Okay, well, they could make it potentially taller if they wanted it to soar into the sky like all the other buildings that are going up around. Another very important question, which I forgot to ask. If the construction of this site, of this facility is so desperately needed, so urgent, because cancer can't wait, and because there are 53,000 new cases of cancer in the state of New Jersey every year, and because this is such a major emergency, why was the city busy building the Performing Arts Center, all the student housing apartments, luxury student housing that's going up all around campus and downtown, instead of having started building this years ago? Why is this only now, in 2020, being put forth? And why is the community only now being informed about this?
I'm not sure. I wasn't involved in any of those projects.
The other question, going to the legal matter that the attorney raised, how can this body, the planning board, possibly approve this plan without having settled what will happen to the children of Lincoln Annex?
That's right.
I see absolutely no way that that can happen, whether it's the legal procedure or not, okay? What I will ask is, however, what are the health impacts, if any of you know, if RWJ could share it with us, of exposure, children being exposed to PAHs, benzopyrene, arsenic, lead, and all these other carcinogenic contaminants in the ground at 131 Jersey Ave, and I'm sure we'll soon find out at 50 Jersey Ave, once we get those environmental reports. My other question, and I will stop here, is given what we know now about 131 Jersey Ave, and what a literally deadly toxic place it is the city working in collusion with RWJ to cultivate new cancer patients for its center in the future? As cynical as it sounds, that's exactly what this looks like. This looks exactly like what I just said, that you're going to send kids to a contaminated site where they could potentially develop cancer, and then, oh, guess what? There'll be some of the new money-making, revenue-generating patients going into the
J-U-A-R-E-Z. 264 Drift Street, New Brunswick, New Jersey. Drift Street, New Brunswick, New Jersey. Swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Yes. I just want to express my frustration about this matter because I am a parent of a Lincoln Annex, and I've been hearing everything. And I really say it is very frustrating for me as a parent to hear that everybody, including yourself, are making these decisions without thinking of the risk that will affect my child. And that I continue to hear more and more things come up, and how embarrassing is that somebody from the community had to come and dig out everything of a potential site that who, first of all, I would like to know, decided that 131 Jersey Avenue was an appropriate place for my child to be sent to. Because she's going to be there. They're actually, Oscar and my daddy, I can't see, stand up. Those are my children. And he's young enough that he will have to go there. So it would affect me. And I'm very, very upset that people keep on commenting when their children will not be affected. My children are being affected and will be affected. And it's very sad to know that so many people are not putting so much, this is great. But even the board, I've attended every single board meeting, Board of Education, where people have been shut down, where beautiful presentations like this have been posted or presented, at Board of Education meetings. That's the Board of Education. You should have focused on showing us what beautiful building you're going to have for our children. I found it very insulting to have to attend a Board of Education meeting where they're having the same presentation, but they're not addressing our concerns, because this is not the first time that I've heard. I just started getting involved, but I know a lot of parents have been asking the same questions, and for a Board of Education, and for people to keep on hearing us say the same things and not get together and speak and address our concerns, it's embarrassing. It's very frustrating. It leads me to believe what people are saying, that they don't care about our children, that they want our children to get sick. It's very sad. It's very sad and upsetting to know that my children are not being considered because they're the ones that are getting affected. It's embarrassing to have people here say that everybody keeps on throwing the ball to each other. No, we don't have nothing to do with this. No, we don't have to. Then why are you addressing the matter? Obviously, you had something to do with it. If not, this wouldn't be talked about here. So it's very confusing to come to meetings like this and find out about different solutions for cancer patients, but it's affecting a school. That school is good. I live in this town. I know that there's elementary schools that are not in the shape that this school is, and the money that I invested in this school, for you to consider throwing it down when obviously the children are doing good. The children have exceeded in that school. The records show it. That's public. You could look in the report cards where the children are exceeding expectations. The last board meeting in December, they showed how many students in that school have gone above and beyond in education. So as a parent, I completely am in disagreement with this plan going forward without thinking about my child. My child should be a priority too as well. And the students and the Herrera. 56 First Floor Avenue.
And do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. So my question was, would you send your kids or grandchildren, in fact, to this place, to where you want to build the new school for 8 hours a day for at least 8 weeks? And could you take the time to at least analyze the pictures and see the conditionings you're putting me in? I'm a student of Lincolnics, and frankly, I'm worried about my study. My other question was, did you ever put us in count on what you're doing, or did you only think about your pocket? Still remember me. I came to the City Hall for a tour not too long ago, maybe a week or two, and you all promised that you'd do something to help us, and I do not see that promise kept. Thank you.
I'm going to translate for him.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Cándido.
Oh, his name and address. Cándido, C-A-N-D-I-D-O. Osorio, O-S-O-R-I-O.
137 James Avenue.
you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Yeah, thank you. Just one more. You raise your right.
I'm sorry?
Just raise your right.
Oh,
You swear or affirm that you'll translate from Spanish language to English and English to Spanish?
yes.
Thank you.
Tengo la primera pregunta para el señor Domínguez.
Sí,
I have a first question for Mr. Dominguez.
Usted dijo que trabaja para la ciudad.
sí.
He asked if he works for the city.
Yes, I do.
Si trabaja para la ciudad, ¿qué tiene que venir a presentar este edificio que pertenece a Robert Wood Johnson?
If he works for the city, then why is he presenting this building for Robert Wood Johnson?
I'm gonna do it in both. Primero, no estoy presentando el edificio. Son fotos para enseñar los diseños del edificio. Lo que estoy presentando, I'm going to do it in both languages. Lo que estoy presentando es el plan para diseñar los límites de cómo se puede construir este edificio cuando es para construirlo por el desarrollador, cuando llega a ese momento, si llega a ese momento. So what I'm saying is, I'm not creating this plan for Robert Wood Johnson. This plan isn't for this building per se. These are renderings of the building. I am presenting a redevelopment plan setting the parameters and limitations of this plan for the designated redeveloper should this plan go forward.
Yo creo que antes de venir a presentar un plan de estos para el Hospital Robert Wood Johnson, deberían de presentar en cualquier parte de la ciudad un edificio nuevo donde va a ser la nueva escuela que quieren, a donde quieren mandar a nuestros hijos.
He said that before presenting the plans for this new school, for the new Cancer Institute, he believes that the city should be presenting the plans for the new school where the children will be sent.
Señor Domínguez, hasta donde tengo entendido están pensando en construir, y creo que usted tiene muy bien esa información, el próximo verano empezar a construir este edificio.
Esa información no la tengo. I don't know that to be true. I don't know the facts of that. You can translate for him.
He asked if Mr. Dominguez is aware that they're planning to begin construction on the Cancer Institute this summer.
Okay, yo soy un padre de un estudiante de la Lincoln Annex.
He's a parent of a child at Lincoln Annex.
Y es por eso que es la importancia para mí estar en todas estas reuniones.
And that's why this is so important for him to be at all of these meetings.
Desgraciadamente hemos ido a las reuniones de la Junta Directiva de Educación, a reuniones de los freeholders, hemos estado acá y lo único que siempre hemos encontrado son mentiras.
Unfortunately, we have been at the Board of Education meetings, the freeholders meetings, here at City Hall, and the only thing we've gotten are lies.
Ahora yo quiero que cada uno de ustedes se ponga a pensar antes de que aprueben cualquier avance para este building, que se pongan a pensar en nuestros hijos.
He would like the planning board to please think before you make any decisions in approving the progression of these plans to take into consideration the children.
Y me gustaría que antes de que tomen una decisión en lo que se vayan a votar o lo que se vaya a hacer, que tomen en cuenta las voces de los padres de estos niños que van a ser enviados a un lugar que está infectado de muchas cosas donde pueden contraer muchas enfermedades.
And he would like for you to take into consideration. He would like for you to take into consideration before you make any vote, before you make any decisions, the voices of the parents and the children who are assembled here, and the impact that this could potentially have on the children's health if they were to be sent to the other location.
Yo creo que es lo mínimo que nuestros hijos se merecen y creo que ustedes harían lo mismo, luchar por la educación y por la salud de sus hijos.
He believes it's the minimum that you can do, and he would expect that you would do the same for your own children and fighting for them as well.
Thank you.
My name is Daniel Markham, M-A-R-K-H-A-M. I live at 290 George Street, right down the street. Go to Rutgers. The main thing I want to...
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. I would like to know how much RWJ stands to profit from this Cancer Institute.
That's not information that I would know. Again, this is just a plan for the parameters of the building. I have no idea their financials.
So did you come here just to stand there like a useless sack of shit?
I came here to present the redevelopment plan that I created for this project.
Mr.
You
Chairman,
guys-
I understand.
Please, you're going to have to speak respectfully in this gathering.
So you're sending these children to a place they are probably going to get cancer from. You're destroying this effective school by all means. And what? So you can rip off cancer patients and price gouge them through the private health insurance industry? Now I'm hearing that like the CEO of the hospital owns property that they're gonna buy, so he's gonna profit. All of this is so people can just make money off of cancer patients? That's all I gotta say.
Sure, Brian Kulas, Kulas as in Sam. My address is 130 Longfield Court in East Brunswick. I am a former resident of New Brunswick with 9 years.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and the truth?
Yes. I have a couple of questions. More regards into planning. So, first, how many stories is this going to be?
I want to say about 15 plus or minus a couple of feet. I've set a height limit. It's to the designated redeveloper to adjust their stories to the height limit. If they want to make one 200-foot story, that's on them at that point.
How many floors is the current hospital?
I want to say it ranges between 3 to 6 in different locations.
The current hospital is between 3 and 6 stories.
Right. There is a medical office building possibly in the pipeline that we amended a redevelopment plan for last year that would be about, I think, 14 stories and 220 feet in height. But
how many stories is the parking garage right now that they just built for $60 million? I'm curious. Range, stories.
I'm not sure exactly where that parking garage is. The Plum Street one, the one that's inside Little Albany. I think that's about 3 or 4 stories.
Okay, and what about the other? I'm not really sure what it is.
The one behind the children's hospital.
Yes, that one, and then the children's hospital. How many stories is the children's hospital?
Offhand, I'm not entirely sure. I think it's in that same 3 to 6 range.
Can anyone on the planning board please accurately tell me how many floors we're looking at? No one has that information. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe you said Robert Wood Johnson is one of 3 trauma centers?
I said that
If I'm not
Robert
mistaken,
Johnson
please
is one of
correct.
3 level 1 trauma centers in the state.
Okay, all right, and it receives air transportation from emergency situations, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
I cannot confirm or deny, but I believe you are correct.
By helicopter, the emergency patients come in.
I'm not entirely sure about how that works,
you
but I think you're right.
You think, you're not sure?
I've never
Okay,
seen the
fair,
helicopters
fair.
come through, so
Okay, all right.
I'd like to think that they do.
All right, so my question is, if this is going to be 12, 15 stories, and the other sound off limit, maybe the children's hospital is maybe 8 or 9 stories, you're really limiting the emergency traffic for the helicopters to come in. You're going to have to do a lot more redeveloping than you think. Because, and when these helicopters come in, these is everybody, and these are urgent, immediate life, when that helicopter comes in, that's life-threatening for these people. They are in immediate danger. And this is everybody, car accidents, this is the whole region. So there's gonna have to be a lot more planning than just this hospital. So my other question is it fair to say that the current transportation hub is the train station right now? Is that fair to say?
In what sense of transportation hub? Because
Well,
I just want to make sure that you're not saying, the hub, the crater.
Let me clarify. So the general point of meeting of transportation access, we're talking the trains, buses, taxi cabs.
Would be
So
the
it's
New Brunswick train station. Yes.
Okay, so let me see, we're talking about New Jersey Transit trains, we're talking the taxi cab destination, we're talking the bus stop that I believe is on Somerset Street that serves Rutgers buses, the main transportation hub for New Jersey Transit, meaning that the buses that go to the community college, the buses that take you to outside Saraville, the buses that take you to Woodbridge, the buses that take you to Old Bridge, all kind of convene there. If I'm not mistaken, many of those stops all begin and end there. You also have the MCAT, which serves people who are poor, people who are disabled, who have to go to social services. So what I'm trying to figure out is when you do all this development, where George Street is, to my knowledge, one way on each side, if I'm not mistaken? One lane?
Yeah, 2 lanes, 1 in each direction?
Yes, yeah. And Easton Avenue, I believe, is the same right now, 1 lane in each direction.
Yeah.
And Route 27 is 2 lanes on each section?
Yes.
1 and 2 lanes. Oh. Okay, and also there's absolutely, for people who really just want to drop someone off at the train station on the northbound side, where you have to kind of stop and immediately, actually the police sometimes ask you to leave real quickly, even when, my point is very simple. Plus you have the Coach USA. The Coach USA bus that goes down Route 27 picks up right in front of the train station. So how on earth can you please explain to me, Planning Board, how it is you plan to construct this building without interfering the general health, public safety of not just those in this community, but Middlesex County in general? At rush hour, we hardly have enough room at all to fit the ambulances coming in. And these are with paramedics. These are with ambulance following before them. When I lived in New Brunswick during rush hour, there were times I had to see police, New Brunswick police, literally try to navigate and escort through the traffic ambulances behind them, because they couldn't really seem to separate the cars. There was just not enough room. I've seen cars kind of uplift themselves on the sidewalk because there was just not enough room. And that's, we are not here, we are not against a cancer center. We are not. But what we are here is saying that there's better ways, there's other ways. And you don't have to burden the backs of children who have to do it. Now, who go to the school, who are going to have to burden this if this is what goes forward. Now, at the last New Brunswick Planning Board meeting, the last Board of Education meeting, there was a student who went, to my memory, let me clarify that, to my memory, there was a student who went to the, 40 Van Dyke Warehouse School, all right? She stated that because she went to that school, to my memory, that she really struggled with education, that it was not a fitting, suitable place for her to learn, and that when she went to Middlesex County College, she found herself quite behind. And she put a lot of that reasoning, to my memory, on the conditions of the school. And not just the inconvenience, the burden that was placed on her from just being uprooted to where she wasn't comfortable. I believe this was the Red Shaw School, if I'm not mistaken, to going to this school. So I feel I've made my points, but there's one thing that just kind of, I would just make a couple more points. The MCAT that I mentioned. I heard you, sir, mention that people are going to be encouraged to walk. People are going to be encouraged to take public transportation. What about people with physical disabilities who can't walk? You just going to encourage them to walk and use public transportation? It doesn't work that way. Things have to be planned safely and accessibly. And I don't even know how you're going to be able to construct this. But there is one thing I would like to close on. If this really is about helping cancer patients, all right, maybe there is a way that this can be done. Is it possible that does it have to be Robert Wood Johnson? Because across the street from St. Peter's, right across from their emergency department, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the former Votac High School, the County Votac High School, that right now is just sitting empty, dormant, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes.
Can we maybe just tone this down a little bit? Does it have to be 712 beds? Knock that building down and put a cancer hospital there? You're not inconveniencing everyone. It is a much safer location. If you have to do intimate domain, well, you could cut into Bucolic Park, which is just lined with trees on the street corner. Make that street wide, all right? This is dangerous, but keep in mind, this, you know, it's okay if you want to sit there and say, stand there, sir, and say, I'm not sure what those helicopters are that come in over, you know, that's fine. But what you're doing is you're creating, for people who are in vital situations, being transported by air helicopter, you're putting them at risk because you are leaving Robert Wood Johnson with a one-way in and a one-way out. And that's just not how the weather works. Sometimes the weather, that, you know, helicopter needs to take a different route. So you are putting people at risk. If you want to build a cancer center, knock down the former Votech right across from St. Peter's, and then I think that's a fair compromise.
My name is Miguel Romero Trejos.
What's my last name?
Romero, R-O-M-E-R-O, hyphen Trejos, T-R-E-J-O-S.
And your address?
299 Somerset Street.
Do you swear to affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. So I just want to start out by clarifying that the Board of Education does not provide buses for a school that is under 2 miles, and both of these schools, both the Pathway School or Warehouse School, that is under 2 miles, and same thing with 131 Jersey Avenue. I'd also like to, mention, has anybody here walked down Jersey Avenue recently?
Yes.
You have? Can you tell me which area you walked by?
I've been down the entire street. I don't know what area you're speaking of.
Okay, I'm talking about the area where there's a couple of houses. There's a recording place called In the West. It's like, I'm not...
Does that have to do with this project or what we're
No,
on?
it does sort of. It does, because the way to get to 40 Van Dyke, to get to the Pathway School, is through that area, and that area is not developed. There's a bunch of abandoned formerly industrial places like warehouses or other factories and things like that, and the sidewalks are not developed. There's a bunch of sidewalks that are, there's a bunch of like trees and branches and things going over it, and roots coming out of the ground, and you know, if you're gonna have a bunch of young kids that are, you know, between the grades of 4th and 8th grade, and they're gonna be walking down the street playing around, it's not really a place for people to really walk. It's not, and you know, I think the city's underestimating how much it's going to take to, you know, make this a walkable and accessible place. I think you should reconsider and maybe think about building the cancer center in the abandoned hole in the ground. I mean, it's across the area. I know you're gonna have to go through NJ Transit. Maybe instead of having a bridge, you have a tunnel or something like that. But I mean, I think it's pretty clear that, you know, this is a plan that's really only benefiting people that have a lot of money and that are in power, and not benefiting the community. And that's basically it.
Can you state your name, spell your last name, and your address?
Thea Martin, Rutgers, Demers Hall in Brunswick, New Jersey.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Address? Rutgers, Demers Hall, New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Do you swear to affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am. So although I'm not from New Jersey, I'm not even from New Brunswick, not even from New Jersey, I'm from Washington, D.C., I have gone through something very similar to what's happening with Lincoln Annex with my high school, Benjamin Banneker Academic High School. The year I graduated, it was #1 in D.C., and it had earned its students, which were came from impoverished families, would be first of their family to go to college, and were people of color, and were people who could not afford to eat food regularly, so they came to the school and they could eat at the school. Because of the school's resources, the entire graduating class, which was about 106, around 100, was able to earn $35 million in scholarships, and this was in a school building which was way too old. It had very damaged floors, it had a lot of cockroaches, it had a lot of dust that could not be cleaned. There were multiple classrooms in which dead mice were in the vents, and it caused, it was just not clean vents, it was not clean air. We did have lead issues because of how old the pipes were, and I bring this up as sort of a contrast to what the Lincoln Annex School is now. From what I've been told, it is about 4 years old, and it is in a prime location in which students are safe. And I bring this up because, like, my school was safe, because my brother, when he went to his middle school, and even in his high school, he was not safe. In his middle school, right outside of the school, behind the playground, he was mugged. Some of his friends were mugged around the area in which that school was in. Some of my friends and acquaintances in my high school had family, had friends who were shot in their neighborhood, around their neighborhood schools. One of my neighborhood schools, Cardozo, although it looks as nice as it can be, and although it is as big as it is and has a nice campus for most of its time, it did not have working bathroom stalls. It was not fit to see the needs of the people in the neighborhood. And I bring this up because I want you guys to consider the fact that Lincoln Annex is a guarantee. It is a guarantee to serve the population of New Brunswick. It is a guarantee to serve the kids. It is a guarantee as a safe space. The area around it is safe, and this may be because of the proximity to Robert Wood Johnson. But you cannot simply guarantee this when you move it to when you move their location. You cannot even guarantee that through the Cancer Research Center that the jobs that may be offered to the New Brunswick residents, that they will pay enough to send these kids to a good school in which they are safe, in which they are protected from the elements, in which there is no radiation. That's not a guarantee, and there is no guarantee that that enough of these people in the New Brunswick area can be hired so that way it really accurately feeds the community. And even if when the Lincoln Annex School is demolished in the transitional period time between the building of the Cancer Research Center, I think you specifically brought up a farmer's market, is that correct?
Yes, as a transitional use of the site.
I want to bring that up, that even though that may help sort of food issues that may be in the community, it is not permanent and therefore does not have the same effect that Lincoln Annex does right now as a permanent setting for these kids. And I also want to bring up the fact that kids in my school could not do as well as they did if they did not have the proper elementary and middle school guidance that we had because of how extreme our school was, and that we could not get 100% graduation rate, and that we could not get full rides. I will note that one of my friends, who also lost somebody in the school shooting, was able to get a full ride to Princeton and to George Washington because she had a good elementary and middle school background, because she was safe in her school, because when she was at school she could just focus on her academics and she did not have to worry about health concerns or how she would get back from school. That is what Lincoln Annex is providing to the community, and that's something that I think really needs to be considered. Thank you.
Elizabeth Ciccone, C-I-C-C-O-N-E, the William H. Johnson House, 52 Welton Street, New Brunswick. How many of the planning board...
Sorry, do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. How many of the planning board members are actually employed by the city of New Brunswick? Isn't he? How much federal funding will go towards the Cancer Institute? Towards this building?
I have no idea.
My understanding is that the Cancer Institute received federal grant funds towards producing this building. Is that correct?
I have no idea.
Are you aware that if there were federal funds involved, that this will require a Section 106 review under the National Historic Preservation Act?
I am aware of that.
When will you be able to determine whether that review will be needed?
That's a determination to be reviewed if and when there's a site plan that's presented. They'll have to address that as part of their packet.
How many of these homes have been investigated for actually having some historical provenance in the city?
I don't know if the potential redeveloper has done any background on it, but I have not. I've just constructed this development plan.
Why is it that the city thinks that it's important to move children to a site that causes cancer in order to build a cancer institute? I don't think the irony is lost on any of these people. Apparently it's been lost on some of the city people. The size and scope of this building will cause an encroachment on things that are historically important to the city. The National Historic Preservation Act requires an encroachment zone to be built around those buildings to ensure that they aren't damaged by the building of the new building, but even that their location isn't somehow made not historic by being in a neighborhood that is no longer historic. What about all of the historic buildings that are right downtown in New Brunswick, such as the train station?
The train station is a wonderful accessory to this building. It adds a lot to it. I can't see how this building detracts from the train station. If there are any specific federal guidelines that this conflicts with, the developer will have to deal with them at that time.
The sheer height of the building will encroach on the train station by causing changes to the sight lines, changes to the angles of the sunlight that reach the street. There are multiple ways that this is encroachment.
The developer will have to deal with that at such a time.
Is the city considering what's going to happen with the other areas around this side? What about the buildings that are not presently in green?
They will be unaffected directly by this project.
Directly?
Yeah.
How will they be impacted indirectly, and has that been addressed?
They're, depending on certain angles, there may be some additional shade. Again, these are all questions that can be addressed during the site plan review of the project. But the building also has some built-in step backs, assuming that this is the design that they keep to try and mitigate the canyoning and the shade creation of the building. And so it's also smaller than the medical office building that may be coming at the surface lot on Somerset Street. And so it's actually somewhat less intense of an effect on the neighborhood than that building, which is already somewhat in the pipeline.
A lot of mention has been made to the site that was formerly the Fern Deck. There has been talk about that site, but no talk as to why this can't be moved there. Why can't it?
That site was not discussed as one of the options for this development.
What is expected to be put there instead that we would displace if we had to bump this Cancer Institute over?
There's a redevelopment plan with certain parameters for that site, and presumably whatever's on that redevelopment plan.
Well, aren't you in charge of that? What's on the redevelopment plan?
I didn't craft that redevelopment plan, but to give some context as far as what I remember offhand, about 3 buildings, 350 feet in height, mix of office, commercial and residential.
So why can't that be changed and this particular building put there instead of this site?
The other site was not a consideration for that development.
So basically, because the convenience of the developer would like this spot, no one would bother to ask about a different spot that might be convenient to everybody else in the city.
Wake up, people.
So, with this location, there are other homes all the way around here, but you've made no indication that any of these people have been contacted.
They have not been.
So even the people living right next to what is proposed haven't been spoken to about what is proposed.
The parcels themselves have not been contacted either. That's not a requirement for the development and redevelopment plan. Site plan approval requires a 200-foot notice, at which point the neighbors and all the other related and needed to be notified people will be. This particular step in the process requires no notice.
The outcome today, if I'm understanding this process well, and I'm not saying I don't, my understanding is that the vote that is intended is to just give a green light to them looking at this further. That's what it sounds like on the surface, but we've all experienced where these things don't go down that way in reality. So it's very difficult to trust that allowing this one yes vote is gonna still allow for the public to have their say in the process. Also, I don't understand how we can be displacing this many people without telling them. And yeah, I really don't understand.
None of those people are inherently being displaced. They have to, again, be bought out by the companies. They have to pay for it. There's a relocation component if that comes to it. There's no eminent domain under redevelopment and housing law.
Why can't we build a new school first before we tear this one down? Why does this have to go up before they can make a different school? Why is the order the developer gets the priority and not the citizens?
Not children.
Citizens and children. Why can't we do this in simply a different order? Why does this have to be first? Why is there a rush here?
As far as I know, the intent is to do this in parallel. We just happen to have this plan ready here today. The next one will be ready at the next month's meeting. But the construction and development of these separate but interlocked projects the intent is to have them concur in parallel.
But that still doesn't answer the question of why you would have to tear down a school to allow this before building the other school. I'm not even saying we shouldn't have cancer care. I think cancer care is important. I think most people would agree that cancer care is important. All I'm asking is, why are we doing this part first?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, because I know that we've gone over this several times. I know that Dan's tried to explain it, Mr. Dominguez has tried to explain it. This is a review of a proposed redevelopment plan. There is no proposal that this board is voting on or considering to tear anything down or to build anything today, tomorrow, the day after. The city is not building. The city is has some control over land use regulations, and this is a control that the city is given to the planning board to look at the master plan, to reconcile it against a redevelopment plan, and see what elements of that redevelopment plan or what specific components, if you have any proposals, additions, subtractions to the plan that you want to send back to the governing body. I think that a lot of members of the public are under the assumption that you're giving a green light to start construction and tear down a school and to build the school only after a cancer center has been built. None of that is what this board is considering today. We don't have any plans whatsoever for displacing people either, because this is not city-owned property. And as I've said several times, and Mr. Dominguez has said, this is not where eminent domain will be exercised. This property, just like any property owner, has the right to say, yes, I accept your offer, or no, go away. I'm not going to sell you my property.
Thanks for clarifying.
So he can tell you that you're not really voting on everything, you're just voting on whether this can go forward. So I'm asking you to vote against this going forward because it's very clear that it's not very well thought out and it's detrimental to the community.
Just like to remind everyone that we have a 3-hour limit on these meetings. So again, try and keep your comments as brief as possible. We need to conclude this meeting by 10 o'clock.
Mr. Chairman,
And so you'll adjourn it
again
and continue the hearing later.
Excuse me, just 1 second. Sure. If I may once again remind the board members that if you can ask members of the public if they wish to repeat something that's already been said, perhaps they can just say that they agree with the person that had said something just before them, that it said something so that it doesn't need necessarily be repeated.
Point of order. If we reach the time limit, the meeting will be adjourned and the hearing continued, correct?
Mr. Chairman, this is the time now where members of the public can make comments or ask questions. There is no point of order here at this point. This is continuing with the public session.
Could you just answer my question, please? Are you going to allow us to speak? Or if we hit the three-hour limit, will you adjourn and continue the hearing later so that you can get all the testimony? I believe the curfew is on testimony, right?
Mr. Chairman, there are members of the public that are still waiting to speak. Perhaps we should address them first.
Just like being before,
well, don't try anything, because
Yes,
this is,
wait, like you left and then made the vote.
I'm waiting my turn.
So I'm a Lincoln Annex student attending Lincoln Annex right now. I don't want to be sent to a warehouse, honestly, or for. It wasn't.
We can swear.
Sorry, can you tell me your name? Diego Osorio. Where do you live? 137.
Alright, I'm gonna tell you, do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Go ahead.
Okay, so I don't want to be sent to a warehouse, and I don't want future children to be sent to a contaminated area that we don't know what chemicals must be lurking around 131 Jersey Avenue. Now that site is contaminated, and it seems to most of us that the Cancer Institute is the cause of future students getting cancer. Well, that's what it says. I don't want future kids getting cancer either, so I want you to check your opinions and come up with a better solution for all of us. Thank you.
Hi, can you tell me your name and last name? And what's your last name?
Elias,
Can you spell that?
P, A, L, A, Z.
And your address? I swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Go ahead.
I came here to say that I don't want my school to be sold because I love that school, and I don't want to be in buses there and being there when I can get sick from it. And I don't want I want you to check your opinions because I don't want that school to be sold.
I'm going to translate for her.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Caritina Hernández.
Caritina, C-A-R-I-T-I-N-A, Hernandez, H-E-R-N-A-N-D-E-Z.
137 yo escribo.
137 Joyce Canal.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
¿Voy a decir la verdad?
Sí, toda.
Yes.
No, you've been previously sworn, so you're still going to translate for us, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sí, bueno, yo soy madre de Diego. Él está estudiando en Lincoln Annex, una de las mejores escuelas de New Brunswick.
I'm the mother of Diego, who's studying in Lincoln Annex, one of the best schools in New Brunswick.
Estoy aquí pidiéndoles a ustedes que no permitan que construyan un edificio a costa de la seguridad de nuestros hijos.
I'm here asking you to please not construct this building, she pointed to Exhibit A1, at the cost of the security of our, safety of our children.
No estoy en contra del Instituto de Cáncer, estoy en contra de que tiren la escuela de mi hijo para construir el edificio cuando el Hospital Robert Wood Johnson tiene otros espacios donde construir su edificio y ya está más grande.
I'm not opposed to the construction of the Cancer Institute. I am opposed to, she's opposed to closing her son's school, especially when Robert Wood Johnson has other sites where it could build this.
Sí, mi pregunta es para el señor. Yo no sé si usted sería capaz de tirar la escuela de su hija para construir un centro de cáncer donde van a salvar vidas, pero por otra parte su hijo va a estar en peligro, corriendo, caminando por esas calles tan peligrosas y en ese lugar tan contaminado.
She's asking Mr. Dominguez specifically if he would be in favor of tearing down of the school, if his daughter attended that school, to build this Cancer Institute, if he knew that his daughter would be in danger walking to the new location and in danger because of the contaminants at the site.
Sí, quiero que ponga
conciencia que va a poner en peligro 760 niños.
I want you
Va a
to...
salvar vidas, pero va a poner en peligro 760 vidas.
Yes, I'm sorry, I missed something earlier, that the Cancer Institute may save lives, but it'll be putting others in danger, the lives of children. She said, yes, this Cancer Institute will, may save lives, but it'll be putting the lives of children in danger.
Yo no sé si ustedes viven en la ciudad de New Brunswick. Yo vivo hace 15 años en la ciudad de New Brunswick.
I don't know if you all live in New Brunswick, but she's lived here for 15 years.
Y sé cómo se vive aquí y he visto que van construyendo edificios grandes donde no nos benefician a nosotros.
I know what life is like here, and I've seen how there's been all this new construction of big buildings that do not benefit the existing community.
Al contrario, nos afectan demasiado porque están sacando las pocas escuelas que tenemos, nos las están quitando para mandarnos afuera como si no tuviéramos ningún derecho a estar aquí.
On the contrary, they're affecting the community negatively because they're tearing down schools, which is affecting the community, and people have a right to be here in the city.
Y me gustaría que ustedes pudieran visitar esa área donde quieren mandar a nuestros hijos, una zona tan peligrosa, y me gustaría que el señor aquí, representante también de esto, que caminara por esa área y que viera lo peligroso y lo complicado que es que los niños puedan llegar a esa área.
She'd like you to visit 131 Jersey Avenue and go walking down that street and see for yourself what the conditions are like there, and particularly Mr. Dominguez, who's presenting this plan, to go to the site and see what the conditions are like there, see how dangerous it is.
Sé que son unas personas inteligentes y van a ver que el futuro de nuestros hijos, nosotros estamos pensando no solo en el futuro, sino en el presente también.
She knows that you all are intelligent people, and that she wants you to know that we are not thinking only about the future, but about the present right now.
Sí, porque están diciendo que este es el futuro, la escuela que van a construir es el futuro, pero ¿qué pasa de la seguridad de nuestros hijos hoy mismo?
Everyone keeps saying that this is the future, that the new school is the future, but what about the security of our children now?
Estamos aquí, no solo yo, estamos muchos padres, no solo son los voluntarios, las organizaciones, sino los padres.
There are many of us here, not just people from different organizations, but parents, in fact, of children at the school.
Y estamos aquí defendiendo la seguridad y la dignidad de nuestros hijos y de nuestra ciudad.
And we're here defending the safety, security, and dignity of our children and of our city.
Solo eso, gracias.
That's all.
Hi, my name is Amairani, Amairani. My name is Juarez, Marin. Juarez is spelled Juarez. I'm a 6th grade. I attend Lincoln Annex as a 6th grade gifted and talented student.
Can I just interrupt you for a sec? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
So, I want to kind of just add on to what other people are saying about moving us to whether it be a warehouse or like build Lincoln Annex in a contaminated place. So I disagree with this because as other people are saying, it's funny how you guys are building a cancer institute to help cancer, yet the place that you are trying to send us to can be the cause of cancer. And like if this does cause cancer, then the Cancer Institute is gaining money and we're losing days of our education. I also want to add that we're that we're not against cancer. We just want our voices to be heard, and we want to be able to have like our education. Also, like how they don't want to provide transportation for us. Think about how that also affects us, because I've been to the place that they want to build our school, and like if you were to be there just listening to how fast the cars go is like scary for me as a child, and I don't think that's right to send us there. Not only that, but I know that when I go to Lincoln Annex, I feel very motivated to go to school, just because Lincoln Annex is a very clean place and like it's nice, and I feel comfortable going to school. I can't say the same about going to a warehouse. I wouldn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't feel motivated to go to school, and that's kind of disappointing. Also, I don't think that you should send us to a warehouse because we deserve better than a warehouse, and that's not right for you to.
New Jersey. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you are to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. I'd also like to swear in my credentials as an engineer. I'm a PhD candidate at Princeton University in the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. I hold 4 college degrees, 2 in applied math, a bachelor's and a master's, as well as a bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering. I've designed submarines, helicopters, and jet engines, and I've performed firmware engineering on 3D printers, smart grid optimization in Zurich, Switzerland, and math research alongside Fields medalists. And so I hope you can take my word and my analysis to the full extent of its accuracy. I wanted to speak against this plan because I don't feel that it's in the interest of the community, and to emphasize the manner in which the current DEFCO plan is legitimately attempting to put the students on contaminated sites. I want to emphasize the fact that the concerns that the community have are true. The 2 sites, 131 Jersey Ave and 50 Jersey Ave, are both contaminated brownfield sites. And I had the ability to read the permit forms as well as associated engineering documents over the weekend to assess the level of contamination at 131 Jersey Ave. All of these documents should have been available to DEFCO, so again, it is an insult to the community that they did not perform this level of analysis before proposing their sites. So I'm going to focus today on the 131 Jersey Ave site because this site is extensively contaminated, and it is the first and primary site that DEFCO has proposed for the location of the new school.
If I may just interrupt you a moment.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, it would appear to me that the bulk of the testimony that's going to be provided is about an off-site and not being considered by this board. Certainly, Ms. LaChance has an opportunity to say whatever she'd like to say, but there are some city residents, I would imagine, that might want to go ahead of her if she wishes to defer until those folks.
Let her speak.
Go ahead, if someone wants to speak about this particular presentation, that would be helpful too. Is there anybody who wants to speak about the Cancer Institute? I mean, maybe we should take those first and hear the opinions that are relevant to
in particular, I'm clarifying some points that that the 2 Rutgers professors here have made. I think that's helpful. So even if DEFCO is able to go through their remediation plans, I assess that there is still a substantially high health hazard to the students at these 2 locations. But to focus on the site at 131 Jersey Ave, because this site is so extensively contaminated, there are multiple remediation strategies that a company like DEFCO may take to remediate the site. Obviously,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, are you a licensed site remediation professional?
No, but I can confirm that the licensed site remediation
I'm not trying to stop you from saying what you'd like to say, but if the board, you presented yourself as an expert in the field, I just wanted to clarify for the board that has not been accepted as an expert in the field of either environmental law or, in this case, structural engineering. It appears that it's more.
Indeed, I will say the document when relevant.
Why every time somebody presents evidence, the right type of evidence to you, you interrupt them and saying something else to get them off track when they have evidence?
Are you intimidated by women? What's going on?
Please keep in mind that the planning board has
has a specific role. I know that's very difficult to grasp. And again, that much of the statements made here are about off-site. And,
It's
you know,
directly implicated by this site, directly implicated by these plans.
again,
If I may clarify.
for our benefit, it's most relevant that the comments be directed towards the redevelopment plan.
May not have the right to speak, then please let her continue. That's all we have to say.
We have evidence, obviously.
It'll go quicker if you don't.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a reason that the lawyer doesn't want the expert to talk. Come on, really? Really? Come on.
They're my opinions, if that helps.
Great.
Okay. So I do not anticipate that DevCo will be able to perform a full XC2 remediation of the site. That's when you actually excavate out all of the soil and replace it with clean filler material during the remediation process, namely because it's prohibitively expensive and also because some of the contamination has a source off-site of 131. So the groundwater will continue to be contaminated. What I do anticipate their strategy to be would be to take presumptive measures. And that's when you put a thin layer of filler down and then cap it with a few layers of concrete. But this type of strategy, although more cost-effective and legal, comes with many health risks. The first risk that I anticipate is that of vapor intrusion. And this is a very serious problem. Vapor intrusion is when chemicals that are present in the soil escape into the air and contaminate the internal airspace of a building. So the vapor can enter the building through cracks in the foundation, through gaps between the walls and the corners of the foundation, or even through utility lines input underground. So this is very serious, and the licensed site remediation professional also notes that this is a risk, saying any redevelopment on this site should take into consideration the potential for vapor intrusion from the groundwater contamination.
If I may, through the chair.
Yes.
Do you have a copy of the LSRP report?
Yes.
Would you like to just introduce that into evidence?
Oh, certainly.
Why don't we mark that as, what's the numerical key?
So this is the notice. I can pull up the full document at the end of this. So hold on a second.
So by introducing it, the board will consider it. You don't need to go through it specifically.
Okay, great. So that's my first major concern.
Let her talk.
The second major concern is the financial risks to the school downstream. Because all of these presumptive measure plans are basically like putting a patch on the contaminated land. And they're associated with a lot of maintenance fees. You have to maybe maintain fans that keep pressure from collecting under the concrete layer. And also extremely intensive investigation procedures, often as frequently as quarterly. So these are all financial risks that an already burdened school district will have to undertake. So I mentioned vapor intrusion. I wanted to note that there are 10 contaminants present at the site. Just thinking about soil contaminants alone, not even considering the extensively contaminated groundwater. And of those, almost all of them are what we call VOCs, volatile organic compounds. And some of them are semi-VOCs. And what that means is that they all present this vapor intrusion risk. So I just wanted to go through a list of these chemicals, and I can provide you the official list from the permits as well. Here's the soil contamination list. I also have some of the groundwater contamination lists. But all of this should be easy to access via the Open Public Records Act.
Mr. Chance, if I could just ask, is the list that you're presenting, is that the basis of your ultimate conclusion that the 131 site is environmentally inappropriate for the school?
That's a large part of it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. 10 of these contaminants exceed not only residential standards, but also non-residential direct contact criteria. So despite the fact that DevCo claims to have remediated the site to industrial standards, what they're really referring to is the remediation of EPHs, and that's essentially like oil products and related compounds like that. But I'm really looking here at substances which will present a vapor intrusion risk. And almost all of these are carcinogenic, if not downright toxic. And if I cite the safety information related to these chemicals, that information is coming from a textbook called Sachs's Dangerous Properties of Industrial Materials, 12th edition by Richard J. Lewis Sr. So here are the soil contaminants, which I again anticipate will be capped and not removed from the site. Benzo-A-anthracene, confirmed carcinogen with experimental carcinogenic, neoplastigenic, and tumorigenic data by skin contact and other routes. Poisonous by intravenous route, human mutation data reported. 2. Benzo-B-fluoranthene, confirmed carcinogen with experimental carcinogenic and tumorigenic data, mutation data reported. 3. Benzo-K-fluoranthene, confirmed carcinogen with experimental tumorigenic data, mutation data reported. There's a trend. So I'll skip a bit of the details. Benzo-A-pyrene, this is exceptionally dangerous, another confirmed carcinogen. Indo-1,2,3-CD-pyrene, confirmed carcinogen. Dibenzoanthracene, confirmed carcinogen. Copper, toxic by inhalation, questionable carcinogen with experimental tumorigenic data, experimental tetragenic and reproductive effects. Arsenic, DOT classification label poison, confirmed human carcinogen producing liver tumors, poison by subcutaneous, intramuscular, and intraperitoneal routes, human systemic skin gastrointestinal effects by ingestion, and experimental teratogen, other experimental reproductive effects, and mutation data reported. Lead, I'm sure you've all heard how poisonous lead is. Poisonous by ingestion, I'll skip some details. The major organ systems affected are the nervous system, blood system, and kidneys. Experimental evidence now suggests that blood levels of lead below 10 mg per dl can have the effect of diminishing the IQ scores of children, and it's noted that children absorb about 50% and retain about 30% compared to adults who only retain less than 5%. And pricing, which is a possible carcinogen. I've mentioned that the EPH, which has still not been remediated to residential levels, are all carcinogenic, if not outright toxic, and this is not even including the contaminants present in the water like the PAHs, arsenic, lead, and so on. I've noted that some of the sources of the groundwater contamination stem from off-site, so even if full remediation of the site will not enable the school to drill wells, they'll have to source water from the water main. All of these things need to be taken into consideration, and all of this information is publicly accessible. There's no reason that DevCo or anyone else could not have looked at this site and done a similar type of analysis. It's just irresponsible. When
Was there anything else that you wanted to mark and move into evidence? I know that you're relying on some
I can
notes.
give you anything.
Well, this is your opportunity to include in the record what you believe is appropriate.
Do you have
If you
anything
want to
in your
mark
file
something
that you-
in.
I'm going to note that the soil is currently so toxic that I'm recommending the community to not take any direct action on the site of 131 as it stands. We note in the deed notice, I think, that the deed notice restriction is to specifically prevent direct human contact and/or ingestion of the site soils, and to prevent the release of airborne soil particles to avoid potential inhalation exposure risk. Likewise, that concrete asphalt cap, which is currently cracking, as one mentioned, is also intended to prevent vehicle traffic generation of airborne dust particles from the impacted soil and to prevent inhalation exposure risks. So again, this soil is so contaminated that I would not recommend that people walk on this site and breathe the air. And yet, This is the best and brightest recommendation of DevCo for the new school site. It's just irresponsible. In engineering, when you do not perform an engineering analysis to its full extent, people can literally die, and that's exactly what we're talking about here with the contamination level present at the site. So I'll give you every one has and conclude my statements. Thanks.
Can I get just a show of hands in terms of the number of folks that plan on speaking?
We've had many of these folks already speak, so the chair's prerogative is.
That's not true.
No. I didn't speak yet. I didn't speak.
Just trying to get rid of us.
Jared, can we,
Sure. The planning board chair can limit the amount of time each individual has. Since we have several people that we want to get to, perhaps you want to limit to 3 minutes.
I'd like to make that suggestion, and also, again, if, I'd really like to prioritize the statements which are relevant to the redevelopment plan and not to the location of the school. I know it's difficult to accept that, but again, that's the charge that we have here in terms of our purview of this redevelopment plan.
Okay, you repeat the time.
Can you tell me what the calculate was 30 seconds?
Okay, can you state your name, spell your last name?
It's Jennifer, Jennifer, last name Garcia, Garcia. Address is 111 and Brunswick, New Jersey.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Hello, my name's Jennifer. I am a current Rutgers student and a proud alumni of Brunswick High School. I graduated in 2015, and I really did experience a lot of transferring. I was one of the first classes in order to experience 4 years at Brunswick High School. I'm very proud of my achievement. A lot of people graduated, but not many people pursued the path to college. Not many people pursued the path to college. The only reason why I did is because my mother pushed me, and yes, somebody else said that I did lack the right education. I wasn't taught math enough, and because of that, I had to go to community college. I couldn't go straight away to a 4 university. One, I wasn't prepared, and two, I just didn't have the funds, and that's what most New Brunswick residents or the students are going to have to confront. Go to community college and then go to a 4 university because it's free now. But again, it depends if they're eligible. With that being said, I also do want to say that I do have a friend who has a father, and he worked for a contractor, a roofing contractor, and he was found to be diagnosed with asbestosis. That was 15 years later after he went away from the job. As he's trying to get workers' comp, they wouldn't give it to him because one, he's undocumented, and two, because once he wanted to receive those funds, the company declared bankruptcy. With that being said, even though that I know that this 131 Jersey Act is a consideration, who's going to be liable if the children do have cancer in the future? Is it the planning board? Is it RWJ? Is it the Board of Ed? Who will be liable? That's my question. Is there an answer or no? Okay, so I guess no one will be liable. I don't think the Board of Ed will be liable either due to the fact that how they presented themselves to the community. They're not transparent. And I also did speak to Mayor Cahill. He was telling to me that he also did transfer schools, and he's a minority, supposedly. And he also said that he was a janitor. But the thing is that his experience in being educated and mine is not the same. One, he's white and I'm Latina. I have more obstacles than he does. You're creating more obstacles to these students of color. I didn't have a way path to go to education. I had to prepare myself. All the work I did was myself. I didn't have a math teacher, and also, this is also seen in my siblings. Why? Because there's not enough teachers. So that's also another problem in New Brunswick. And also, I do want to say about the lead in Roosevelt. I had to pay out of my pocket. I'm also a part-time worker. I had to pay for water just for my sister to take to Roosevelt because she can't drink out of the water fountain. That really did cause a lot of
of my paycheck to be paid. Yearly, I'll be paying probably around $200, I would say, or probably $300. I'm only a part-time worker. What does minimum wage students get? Now it's 10. Back then it was $8.35. Thank you for listening to me.
Anthony Ballero, that's B as in boy, A-L-L-A-R-O. My address is Demarest Hall, Rutgers, on College Avenue.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. So, my name's Anthony. I'm a student at Rutgers. This is my third year here, and I feel as though I've had some time to get to know the wonderful community here at New Brunswick. I would just first like to say, I'm not here anti-Robert Wood Johnson. When I was, my aunt had her hip replacement at Robert Wood Johnson Hospital, and she made a fantastic recovery. My mother has worked in the ER here and has provided her the ability to support my family. My mother is a nurse and my father is a doctor. But what they had not expected was I was born 2 weeks early, and I was delivered at St. Barnabas, who works in conjunction with Robert Wood. And I was placed on NICU for the first 2 weeks of my life, as I had been born prematurely. And had it not been for the wonderful doctors there, I would not be here today now. So I say this now to say that I am nothing but indebted to Robert Wood Johnson, and I don't have a personal vendetta. But when my parents were finally able to take me out of the hospital, take me out of NICU, they needed to do one thing. They needed to have a car seat for your baby. And as any parent will know, that is a very basic thing. Right now, this plan, with the proposal of these buildings and these structures, we have the baby, we have the car, but there is no car seat. And these children are our babies. There's 4th graders that go to these schools. These aren't just middle schoolers. These are people in the 4th grade. And to not have a plan prior seems to describe nothing but negligence on the part of the proposal, as well as why was it that the first site proposed as an alternative, while this may not be within the scope of this hearing, why was the first site that proposed so evidently problematic and so easily debunked and discovered by the residents of New Brunswick? I would just like to end. My mother, she has 2 tumors in her brain. But one of the things that I learned about cancer treatment, my father, he's not an oncologist, he's a primary physician. But one thing I learned, the most effective way to treat cancer is either prevention or treating it early. Right now, this board meeting serves as a prevention. As stated earlier, this is stage 0 of planning. Now would be a wonderful time to stop anything from progressing forward. We don't need to go terminal. We don't need to go 4. We don't need to go, because down the line, further and further, these children will be eroded. If we stop right now, we can save so much time, so much heartache, so many more meetings of you having to hear us. And I would greatly recommend implementing that basic tenet of medicine, of primary prevention, preventing before the problem happens at stage 0 rather than terminal stage 4. Thank you.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es María Chiquito.
María, Chiquito, C-H-I-Q-U-I-T-O.
Vivo en el 63 Louis Street.
63 Lewis Street.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Primero que nada, buenas noches. gracias por el tiempo y buenas noches a todos los aquí presentes.
First of all, good evening, thank you for your time, and good evening to all, everyone present.
Quiero recalcar que este proyecto se ve grandioso, casi perfecto. No lo es por un detalle y es que quieren construirlo destruyendo nuestra escuela.
Okay. So she wants to remark that this project is beautiful, it's grandiose, it's nearly perfect, except for the fact that it will be demolishing a school where children currently attend.
Yo conocí a Dan trabajando con la comunidad, él trabajaba en Unity Square, hizo un magnífico trabajo ayudando a la comunidad, así es que yo quiero pensar, yo creo que en el fondo él sabe que esto no es correcto. No es correcto por el simple hecho de que está dañando a nuestros niños y a nuestra comunidad.
Okay, she says she knows Dan from his work at Unity Square, and she knows that, or she hopes that deep down in his heart he understands that this is not correct. Okay, that it's not correct because it's going to harm and do damage to many children in the community.
And you did a great job with the community, I need to say that.
Yeah.
Tú conociste a mi hija, Diana. Diana va en 5º grado. Quiero que la imagines estresada y triste, llorando desde hace meses por esta situación.
Mr. Dominguez met her daughter Diana. She wants him to imagine her daughter, who's in 5th grade, stressed out and crying and worried about this situation for months now.
Yo sé que es tu trabajo, que tienes un jefe. Eso creo que todos lo tenemos claro, pero queremos dejarles saber a todos la situación que estamos viviendo cada uno de nosotros como padres y lo que están sintiendo nuestros hijos.
She understands that you have a boss, that you have a job, that you have a job to do, but she wants everyone to understand what the families are experiencing and feeling and going through and what the children are experiencing and going through.
Antes de que ustedes voten, me gustaría que supieran que la mayoría de los niños que van a Lincoln Annex viven cerca, viven en el vecindario. Si los niños son trasladados a Jersey Avenue, tendrían que atravesar Somerset, French y Jersey Avenue, que es una zona muy peligrosa.
Before you take your vote, she wants you to take into consideration that many of the children currently live close to the school. They can walk to it. If they were to be relocated, they would have to cross Somerset, French Street and Jersey Avenue to get to the school. And it's a very dangerous area.
Entonces, quisiera que reconsideraran al momento de dar su voto en que este proyecto sería genial, pero si fuera construido en otro lado y no en nuestra escuela. Nuestra escuela es esencial, ya que es prácticamente la única escuela que tenemos en ese vecindario, aparte de Little Lincoln, que es solamente de 1º a 3er grado.
So she'd like you to consider before you take a vote to go move forward with the plans, to consider another site for this project. Lincoln Annex is an essential school. If it is taken away, Lincoln School will be the only one left. Okay. Oh, Lincoln only has 1st through 3rd grade, so that would be the only school in the neighborhood.
I think we're going to have to stop it there in terms of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Russ Cirincione, Cirincie. What's up? 429 Patrol Road Bridge. I'm running for Congress for this district, so this is important to me. Yeah. Sure. I do. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so so the way I see it, there's a lot of issues. This is very, very. If I was sitting in your seat, there'd be a lot of questions swirling around my head. So I think it'd just be good just to really bring it back and just focus on a few questions to be resolved, really. Because I know that there's this one planning board meeting in the abstract, but we really have to consider the most important question above all else is how can this board serve the children? How can you serve the people of New Brunswick, the working families that live here, that make our community what it is? Will the people here be served by replacing a very good school and displacing hundreds, close to thousands of students, teachers, employees, and ripping them from their communities for something that ultimately serves someone else, not in New Brunswick, not the people here? This proposal really only benefits Robert Wood Johnson, and if we're only looking at this proposal on its own, right, I think that this plan right here today is an abomination to the people of New Brunswick, to our students here. When we consider a different number of factors, there are many alternative sites that are very more convenient for New Brunswick. Replacing or tearing down this school will be a huge inconvenience for all the young students going to school. Walking several blocks may be easy for us, but for young first and third graders, and it's a lot. And especially when it snows outside, when it's raining, it's a lot more difficult to do. And I mean, Robert Wood Johnson wants a nice little overpass or whatever, but they could provide a really fancy shuttle to wherever they want to put this site somewhere else. And then when you look at the self-dealing in this plan, when it comes to light, all the different aspects of self-dealing between Robert Wood Johnson and other parties, and it really flies in the face of justice, to be honest. If you want a strong sense of community, you'd be harming that sense of community because of the self-dealing here. And you know, the fact that Robert Johnson did not make a plan, or they didn't even have the decency to create a plan for new construction. I know they say it's coming in April, it's always another month away. It just shows they really don't care about the students here, about the people of New Brunswick. Because I think ultimately they want to warehouse all of the children. You know, we know the warehouse has a lot of vacancies, and making the kids walk that far is just unacceptable. I have a three-year-old son, and making him walk that far would be out of my mind. You know, so really the question is, do you sell the school based on this plan right here, right now? I think it's honestly very clear. The answer is no, because the public interest in keeping the school open far outweighs everything else.
My name is Herb Tarbous, T-A-R-B-O-U-S, at 411 New Market Road in Piscataway. And I'm an announced candidate for Middlesex County Clerk.
Sir, do you swear to affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. There's some questions about the process, maybe to the council or Mr. Mendez. So I guess there was a council resolution that was passed. I referred the matter to this board. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have the resolution here? Could it be read into the record? You don't have the resolution here?
No.
So I had some questions about the resolution. Because I was going through Title 40, so let me ask maybe a general question first. Is that, you guys were talking about, I think, Title 40 today, right? Is that the housing and redevelopment?
48.
48, right, okay. So Mr. Dominguez, you said at one point that this is not a condemnation hearing, but that Title 48 also has a process for non-condemnation hearings. So this whole procedure is still covered by Title 48, is that correct?
Yes, but this is non-condemnation.
It's non-condemnation.
Right.
So, because I thought I heard you say at one point that the New Jersey housing and redevelopment law would not apply here.
No, it does, but so it's not a redevelopment area, it's a rehabilitation area, and it's a redevelopment plan for a rehabilitation area, which explicitly prohibits the use of eminent domain under 48.
Okay. So you don't have the resolution now. There was also a public hearing notice for this hearing, I imagine, right?
No. Redevelopment plans do not need a notice. Designation of a redevelopment area.
I think he's saying for the meeting.
Oh, I apologize.
From the planning board, they would have to issue a meeting notice. Is that correct?
Yes, that was read at the beginning.
Yeah, we do an annual notice for all of our meetings.
Because when I was going through Title 48 today, it said that the planning board was responsible to create a map and put it at the municipal clerk's office. Was that done?
That is for a designation of a redevelopment area, not for a redevelopment plan. So we did not need to do a redevelopment area here, as the whole city was designated a rehabilitation area in the 70s. And so we can create redevelopment plans as overlays and just present them to the board with referral from the city council.
What does it have to do with the rehabilitation versus redevelopment?
Rehabilitation has a lower threshold for triggering, and again, if you make a redevelopment plan for a rehabilitation area, there are certain limitations that you don't have. You can't do any condemnation. There's limitations on tax abatements and a whole slew of other items. But the whole city is a designated area in need of rehabilitation. So if you only do a redevelopment plan for an area in need of rehabilitation, you don't have to do any special notices. If you designate the area in need of redevelopment, which we did not do with this site, then you would have to do all those steps. And we've done that as the city for many redevelopment plans in the past.
Okay, it seems strange to me because the Title 48 gives specific criteria about an area that could be eligible for rehabilitation. Correct?
Right.
You're saying the entire city at some point?
In, I want to say 74, thereabouts, was designated an area in need of rehabilitation, yes.
And how long does that designation last?
Pardon?
What's that?
Offhand, I don't know if it ever expires necessarily.
No.
I don't think so. Plans do have a 30-year shelf life.
Okay, I just wanted to touch on a couple of the ethical and community aspects of this.
I'm sorry, but
I just want to say one more thing. It's a compliment to Mr. Cora Ludwig, is that I read today on a public website that you have an appreciation for the need for growth within New Brunswick, but explicitly not at the expense and integrity of neighborhoods we call our home. And I think we all agree with that.
thank you.
Can you state your name and spell your last name?
Sure, it's Sudeep Bhattacharya, Bhattacharya.
Your address?
I live at the Johnson Apartments on Bush.
Okay. And do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
So I just want to quickly again just repeat something. So I'm a PhD student here in Poli-Sci, Rutgers. I've also been an undergrad here a while ago before I went to work before coming back, and I also organized with the Central Jersey DSA in the area, as well as being a member organizer at AUPAFT. So just giving that background just to know that I feel like there's a lot of stuff happening in the city that have to be contextualized, but I'll get to that a little later. I'll be under time. But really quickly, just more about the process, because you mentioned that this is, so is the issue, when some people talk about the issue and they veer into like talking about the school, is that something you're saying it's separate? Okay. What would be the process then if people want to talk about the school? Is there supposed to be another meeting they can ask for? Okay.
Next month, the planning board will be dealing with a redevelopment plan proposal for whatever site the working group from the Board of Ed produces.
Okay, and who's part of the working group then?
I do not know. I don't know if anyone here has.
Okay. If community members want to be in touch with the working group, how do they get in touch then? Because that's okay.
You might want to get a hold of the Board of Education.
Okay, we've had talks there, not to say like they haven't really been the best at responding. They kind of like walk out once in a while. But, okay, so process-wise, so you're saying we should go to the BOE, ask them who the working group folks are?
I think that's where you're going to find an answer. We can't give you the answer. And I imagine that's where you should probably go.
But is there a process? What about the fact that maybe is the planning board able to or would find interest in meeting with community members? Just like even apart from this situation, like not having them to just come to City Hall, but would you be interested in talking to community groups separately and hear their concerns more on like a deeper level than maybe you guys want right now? Because you're saying this is a part of a different thing, but everyone's connecting the two. Maybe, is there a possibility for planning board members?
Chairman,
I'm not sure I'm getting the question.
Is there,
Yeah, I think what he's asking is for a meeting of members of the board at some other setting. Unfortunately, the municipal land use law specifically prohibits those sorts of meetings.
okay.
As I'm sure you can appreciate, you don't want us meeting with developers without members of the public on approving a plan. So, no,
Okay.
there is no such mechanism.
Didn't you have to meet to get this? Or?
Not us.
Okay, all right, well, that's fair. Just really quick, so what's the next step you would advise? It would be the next planning board?
Advice.
Okay, all right, I'll just wrap up really quickly. I just wanted to ask some questions just to figure out on our end what to do. I think that's something I think really reasonable, and I was hoping for some clearer answers, but just want to say, like I said, I was an undergrad here in 2010, came back now recently, and I've seen a lot of changes already happening in the city. So again, I think everything has to be in context. I know maybe there's some sort of legality to it, but hearing people out about why people are mad about sending their kids from this location, it's all connected to a process in New Brunswick where it feels like groups like this are basically PR, it seems like, for property developers, or providing a roadblock to actually creating some sort of democratic process, if anything. And also, when I was sitting there, and I've been at City Hall events, there's a certain kind of like condescension and, like right then, condescension and sort of looking down on people. And I feel like if you really want to prove people wrong about that, maybe it'd be best to, again, like I say, find a way to reach out or find a way that's legal or something another to provide a space for people to keep having these talks. Because clearly there's more people like willing to line up. So maybe having another meeting that's actually not the next month or something like that, where you can actually show them that you're not just like here doing the smoke and mirrors thing and get people angry and then just come back and they find that their school is gone and everything else is done. Because I feel like that is a little unclear to me, the process of what to actually do as a community member. And yeah, I just wanted to say like,
I'm sorry.
okay, well, and how much time is it that other people are using?
3 minutes.
Okay, all right, well, thank you so much for giving me the time.
Can you please state your name?
Faraya Hodges. I am a organizer for Central Jersey DSA.
Spell your last name.
Hodges. And for my first name, it's Viriyah.
And your address?
8 Wharton Way, Hunterdon County, Highbridge. And actually, I have a few questions about how this facility is going to be run. You've made specifically clear that you do not want to discuss the off-site, so I'll focus on the facility for now. Will Robert Wood Johnson be charging the patients for cancer treatment, and how much?
This board has, this is a plan that has been referred for development of that site as a hospital, as a cancer research and cancer institute. You could certainly ask that when an application comes in from the applicant who's going to be operating it, but
So you
I think,
cannot tell me in any way how it's going to be.
I think you're a little bit ahead of the game because we don't know.
I see.
How is that ahead? This is what's allowing that to move forward. It's not ahead.
Can you tell me how the city, can you tell me if there's any way that the city government will be benefiting from this?
I'm not really sure that I understand the question.
Like, will Robert Wood Johnson be paying, never mind. I'll move on to another question. You mentioned that this is a site for rehabilitation, for redevelopment. That term implies that the area is somehow not fully functioning or somehow is decrepit or something like that. However, there's already a very functional school there, along with a clearly active community and neighborhood. So what justification is there for this redevelopment or rehabilitation at all?
You know, there was a study that was conducted some time ago, so there's a legal criteria, the municipal land use law, for a determination as to whether an area is in need of rehabilitation or an area in need of redevelopment. If it meets that criteria, then it can be designated as such, and it's not unilaterally a designation. I believe that the DCA also, are they involved at this point, or are they involved only upon approval?
I think only upon approval,
Yeah.
submission to them. But yeah, that designation happened in the 70s under the parameters of the local redevelopment and housing law. There's specific outline bullet points of what criteria can trigger creating that designation.
Can you tell me the results of that study, or in general summaries?
The results was that the city of New Brunswick in its entirety was designated an area in need of rehabilitation.
Why? Why? And that's what I want to know. What's the reason? What's the justification?
At some juncture at that time, whoever was involved with the city government and city planning decided that it was in the interest of the city to move forward positive change and development to designate the entire city as an area in need of rehabilitation. And the criteria worked out, and so they did that.
So you cannot tell me specific reasons.
Sir, I wasn't even alive. I don't really know how to answer your question.
The criteria is in the municipal land use law, and he's, Mr. Chair, if I may, he's out of time.
I see. Oh, thank you for the time regardless.
Thank you.
Maroon Suede, M-A-R-O-N, S-O-U-E-I-D. 9 Lake Merrington Drive, North Brunswick.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Okay, so I was born in New Brunswick, right on Hamilton Street, raised partially in New Brunswick. So this school would have affected me had I stayed in New Brunswick, had my parents stayed in New Brunswick. This school would have affected me. You know, I asked the board to have some empathy, just like I, feel like I need to have empathy for the people who are experiencing this now. I was lucky enough to leave New Brunswick, to have my parents, get a better job outside of New Brunswick and to leave the city. However, I don't think that most of the families who are affected by, who use this school, and this is a nice area, it's actually, I consider that Somerset, Hamilton area to be a lot better than it was when I was growing up here in New Brunswick, okay? So I don't think, there's really a need to, to make to essentially displace these people and move them to a different place, right? Have them move to a school that doesn't necessarily, fit the requirements for a good education. And I'm an educator. I've been an educator for about 10 years, okay? And from what I've seen, from what I've read about this site, it doesn't seem like a place that I would ever want my children or my students to be having an education, to learn in, okay? It's not a place that is properly conditioned for a good education. Okay, so I just ask you, the board, to consider, once again, the pleas of the families here who are directly affected, and this is their education is a direct consequence of the building of this cancer center, right? It's a direct consequence, all right? And this has happened in many cities across this country, and it's happened in many small towns across this country. It's a process known as gentrification, okay? This is one step, okay? It's not entirely, this isn't entirely the process, but this is one step of moving people away from the environment that they're used to, the schools that they have attended and learned from, and moving them out and essentially displacing them, okay? So I ask you to consider, to really have some empathy for the people who are going to be directly affected by this. Because I know Jersey Ave, and I know, getting there is not fun, it's not easy, the roads are bad, the area is not nice, okay? And just consider the pleas of the families, and I feel like if I was still here, I would want exactly what they're calling for today, right? This is a good school in a good area, right?
and just consider their pleas, all right?
Hi, my name is Carlos Castaneda, 137 Joyce Gilmer.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. I just want to note that this whole thing has been a mess from the beginning, lack of transparency from the Board of Ed, from the mayor, and everybody involved in this, and I think our community does not deserve this. I think the situation will be different if those 760 kids in that school will be white and rich, right? It will be different. We wouldn't be here sitting down in many different meetings. We'll probably have more lawyers like you, right? Defending them. But we don't have the resources right now. But we do have our voices. And we're not gonna stop coming to every meeting that we need to come in order to stop the abuse of our community. More than half of the population in New Brunswick right now is immigrant. And the mayor is not thinking that way. He's not looking that way. Where is his leadership? He hasn't shown his face in more than 7 months, 6 months since the whole thing started. So if you can relay the message to the mayor, have him come up with a public forum where community members could come in and ask questions, so you don't take all the heat. We have, I don't know if he's a public official, and I have Keith Jones harassing the women, the mothers of Lincoln Annex on Facebook. Every time a mom expresses their feelings on Facebook, there he goes, putting all this harassment, all these postings. So please relay the message to Keith Jones and the mayor. We need for him to show his face in a public forum. Or is he too afraid to answer questions from the community? If this is so wonderful. We need more leadership in this city. And we need a leadership that reflects the community that lives in it. Thank you.
Leo Valdez, V-A-L-D-E-S.
And your address?
311 Magnolia Street.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Hi, my name is Leo. I'm a graduate student in the history department at Rutgers University across the street. I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, man in the green sweater. Have you been like doodling this whole time? Have you been listening? You've been taking notes? Okay, just making sure, because you all have been looking down and like these people, especially the parents and the children, are people who should be respected. And like somebody, one of the other students from Rutgers said, the behavior, your bodily language has been extremely disrespectful. And at Board of Education meetings, it's the same kind of behavior, the same kind of body language. It's really disrespectful. And I think that is a really valid point to bring up because, again, this development affects community members. The other thing, and before you interrupt me, this may be beyond the scope of your legal realm for this context, but the fact is that this site, building this site, does have implications. It's like a snowball effect. That's why this isn't a private investment only. That's why it's a public issue. That's why the public is here, because it's not just the building of this hospital. It has broader implications. So shutting down with that context makes absolutely no sense, and also just reveals that you guys aren't listening to the community members. So that's my point number 2. And then, oh God, the last point I wanted to make was just about gentrification. It's a word that's been thrown out a lot. It's a word that's in the media, and it's a word that has a lot of racial and class implications because it's a very powerful phenomenon that does displace low income and communities of color across the nation, and that's what's happening in New Brunswick. There's no reason that this hospital has to be built in this location. There's really no reason. And the biggest impact of it will be the fact that it's gentrifying the city even more, as people, New Brunswick residents have been pointing out that it's been going on for 20 years. So I just want to say that history will not absolve you. You are gentrifiers, even you, who's just a schmuck getting your paycheck for this company. Like, history won't absolve you. I'm sorry for using that word. I'm sorry for being disrespectful. Body language is also disrespectful. So I hope that you can all provide an apology as well, you know? So, you know, including you, Mr. Lawyer. So I just want to say that it's really important to decide what side, you know, who you want to listen to, who you want to be known for in the future. And like making these decisions to support these corporations that's just going to bring profit for a couple people on the top and completely displacing these community members is really, really wrong. It's just wrong. And it's unnecessary too. It's fundamentally unnecessary. There are other sites, plenty of other sites. So I just want to leave you with that, and I hope it keeps you up at night, because it should, because it's just wrong. It's politically, ethically wrong, and economically unnecessary.
Lennon Lasher, Lasher, and my address, 29 Robinson Street, New Brunswick.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give us the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I mainly just have like 2 questions, I guess. My main question is why you guys can't build the Cancer Institute at the contamination site that people are talking about building the school at. And if any of those reasons then are better than trying to help the community and stuff, if it's better to obviously get rid of this school and not build it at the other site that you guys want to send the kids to, why can't you build it there? Can you guys have the resources and the money to clean up the site, not make it contaminated? That a public school definitely does not have compared to a private institution. And you guys obviously are getting a lot of backlash. So I'm wondering what the reason is for choosing the school rather than the other open site that is available. If anyone can answer that.
Mr. Chair, again, I think we've gone through this a couple of times. This is referred to us from the governing body. We don't choose the site. We're not developing the site, and we're not doing the construction of the site. We don't operate the hospital. We don't operate the school. There's a plan with certain parameters that this planning board is considering, whether to accept, reject, modify. That's all we're looking at this point. That's our legal charge.
There's a building there and not a school.
Say the school.
The school goes somewhere else.
Okay, well, thank you.
Charles Cradaville, K-R-A-T-O-V-I-L.
Your address?
You can send mail to P.O. Box 3180, New Brunswick, New Jersey.
It's very crowded in there.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Interim Chair, members of the board. I hope you'll be a little bit lenient with the time. I have been very invested in this issue. As you know, I come to all your meetings. I provide the service of recording them. And in all the time I've been here, I've never seen the planning board implement any type of time restriction on testimony. So I hope that you'll just give me a little bit of your attention tonight so I can get my points across that I've spent a lot of time preparing.
The reason for that was that at some point we set a 3-hour limit on these meetings. That's why.
And everyone went over.
Yeah.
We need to stop them.
But that's the basis for that.
Well, I understand, and if there's too much testimony to take, you can adjourn the meeting and reconvene at a later date and continue the testimony rather than truncate the testimony and limit what folks are able to present. Sure. I'll do my best. So I do have a question about the time limit for this to be acted upon. The attorney mentioned that you have no choice. You have to have this hearing. You have to do this. What time window do you have to do that?
Mr. Credible, I did not say that. What I said was it's referred to us from the governing body, and we have 45 days to act.
Okay, that's
If we don't act within the 45 days,
So 45
then
days.
then the governing body can act unilaterally.
Okay, and isn't it true that the resolution actually asked you to hear two different things, right? 131 and 121 was in
Right.
that resolution, was
Right,
it not?
we referred both sites with one resolution to do two plans for them. It was just convenient to do one resolution.
I understand, but so you're saying that we have to do this one thing, but this other thing that the resolution also called for is not being done, correct?
The other site?
Yeah, the other site.
It's not being considered tonight.
It's in the resolution, okay. I guess I want to ask, first of all, there's no representative of DevCo, Board of Ed, Parking Authority, Hospital, no one here to testify to anything having to do with this?
Not that I remember.
Okay, then I'm going to urge you to hold off on approving this plan. You have a lot of community input, but we don't have anything on the record from the Board of Ed about the current status of the school, how badly the overcrowding is in our district, how little we can afford to lose a school. And we don't have any testimony from the people who actually want to do this project to support it. And I understand there's a site plan approval process later on, but for them to ask you to do such a big thing and for the city council to refer it to you, I think it would only make sense for them to at least send a representative in case there's questions. And none of them have done that. So I think that the public has exercised our right to be here and to speak up on this. I think if you look at the master plan of the city of New Brunswick, there is a section on schools, and it probably doesn't look kindly upon giving away or selling or closing schools. That's an important part of the community fabric, and the master plan accounts for that. That wasn't touched upon. And there's been a lot of misinformation about sort of the relocation, and I know the mayor said that 131 Jersey Avenue is going to be closer for most families when it's just clearly not. And I also want to bring up the issue that I've been bringing up at your meeting since October, where Robert Wood Johnson, Rutgers, and DevCo broke their promise that they made to this very board. There's a building at 89 French Street where they are supposed to provide an ADA accessible walkway for folks to be able to cut through their campus to make up for the lost land that they gobbled up, Scott Street and Brown Street. We gave them public land, they agreed to do some things in exchange for that, and they failed to meet their obligation. There's supposed to be a traffic light at the corner of Plum and French. Robert Wood said they would pay for it. So now we're hearing Robert Wood's going to pay for a new school, but we've heard this before, we've seen this play before. Now I hear it's a $25 million school instead of 55?
No, I think, were you the one who made the statement? I think the statement was because we injected 22 million into the current Lincoln Annex, and this was going to be a 55, so I'm assuming they were just talking about the difference in that, what the city would be making on it actually. That's where I think that number came from.
The mayor said 25 million.
Yeah, it's the chairman's call. He knows where we're at the time. Okay, I will just finish by saying that both of the proposed relocation sites are contaminated. That's unacceptable. We have a history of selling and destroying our schools in this very neighborhood. The Washington School is a great example, sold to the hospitals. Now the neighborhood needs a school, and Robert Wood wants to take that one too. The Votech school that was mentioned previously is sitting there vacant. That's another closed school in the 5th and 6th Ward neighborhood. Let's not continue that pattern of removing educational facilities. Lincoln Annex is a good thing, and I don't have any judgment on any one of you except the councilwoman who sent this to the board. You have a vote tonight where you can do the right thing. This is your moment to really put the community first. And I am hopeful that my remarks might inspire others to also speak, and maybe you can adjourn the hearing and have another hearing on this in the future. But if you do take a vote tonight, I hope you'll do the right thing and vote this down. They can come up with another plan, and they sure will. But you need to do your part for the community and vote no. Thank you.
Gamboa, Gamboa. affirm that the testimony you're about to give is a true and
So I came a little late. I hope I don't echo on too many comments that have already been made by the community. Although I do think if I do, it's because of their significant importance. And I do think I will definitely echo Mr. Cratterville's comments tonight, especially considering the need to postpone this decision because of the lashback that I think is happening within the community. The outrage is sort of just ridiculous, if you ask me. If you look at downtown New Brunswick, the effects of gentrification just can't be understated, especially how the Hyatt Regency was built over what used to be I think it was a Puerto Rican cultural center. I mean, the reflections of gentrification in this community are just unbelievable. I am currently a Rutgers staff member, and I did my undergrad at Rutgers. And just all across the board, all I hear is the disdain that people feel for Robert Wood Johnson at this point. And while I understand that you guys are still trying to decide if this is the right thing to do or for who this is the right thing to do, I think it's important to consider the families that are directly being affected. Because while you can count on Rutgers students being undergrads and leaving after 4 years, so maybe not taking the utmost interest in this, there are families that live here 365 days a year, constantly having to deal with these decisions that are made, and displacing this many students does not serve in the interest of anybody. I do wonder what the ethicality of it is at some point. Where you get the nerve, kind of, I mean, quite honestly. But I do definitely think I just want to echo the facts that this decision cannot possibly be made right now without all the possible information that we can have. I think as a public, I'm so uninformed with the amount of actual people that are here at these meetings and who can actually provide me with a significant amount of information that I think that I need, and I think that you guys need to make an educated decision like this. So I just want to echo those comments. Thanks.
Public comments?
Reject.
Motion to close the public needs to be made in second.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you.
An opportunity for board members to address. Please.
Just needs to take a quick roll call. Well, actually, you have consent. Unanimous consent.
Close public.
Mr. Chair, this would be the opportunity for the members of the planning board to have a discussion, determine what they'd like to do with this application.
Is there any consideration of the request that was made to postpone? No. Any recommendations to accompany the board's vote on this issue? Any suggestions?
No, I would like to address my colleagues at the board as well as the public when the opportunity is appropriate.
Okay. You want to vote on the public comment, or is that?
No, you can go ahead and you can have comments if you'd like to address the board members on his thoughts about this redevelopment plan.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll take my 3 minutes if I may. So I think it's important for everybody here to understand that the people who serve on this board do so without compensation. We don't get special parking privileges or anything else. We serve on this board as citizens. I know we have a freeholder as well, different category of service, but you're also a citizen.
And I did this way before I was councilwoman.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's important to understand that, at least from my perspective, and I believe I do speak for everybody up here, we do this because we have a passion for New Brunswick, the same as you do. We want to do what's right for this city. And in a lot of instances, it's very easy to see what is right and what requires deeper thought. I think that it's easy to see the passion that the community is presenting. It's also very difficult to discount the benefits of a state-of-the-art cancer center in New Brunswick. I think that I have certainly been thinking about this for the past 2 weeks since I knew this was coming up, and it's been a very difficult decision for me. But I think that at the end of the day, my position is that I will not support this.
there was a 28-page redevelopment plan that was presented, and testimony that was presented by Mr. Dominguez. If the members of the board wish to act on that, as I said, the referral comes from the governing body. There are recommendations made by our planner that have been reduced to a plan in writing that the board members have. If they'd like to add, delete, accept, or reject, in whole or in part, this is the opportunity for the board members to have that discussion and then make the appropriate motion and move.
Reject. Are there any? Proceed to the vote.
There would have to be a motion, I guess it would be a motion to accept the plan as it's written, and then the board members can certainly, if they want to, well, first I think that procedurally it would make sense to say if there's any board member that wishes to make any modifications or changes to the plan, they should probably put that on the table as a motion.
I thought I had asked if there were any recommendations to go along with this.
I'm sorry.
Different from what you. Perhaps that's a different thing, but I thought we had covered that.
And if there are no recommendations to make any modifications, then Mr. Chairman, I believe that the board should consider whether to make a motion to approve the plan and then vote. And obviously, the person that's making the motion to approve doesn't necessarily have to vote in the affirmative. If they do in fact approve it, they can always reject it if they wish, but this is a motion to approve the plan as presented. Someone needs to make that motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Yulita Checo?
Yes.
Suzanne Sabora Ludwig?
Yes.
Brian Berger?
Yes.
Bob Cardica?
No.
John Petrolino?
The recommendation will go to council for them to consider.
They approved it? They sure go 1, 2, 3.
Sell out.
While the Lord is watching you, you will be punished.
How do I say?
We still have session. Anything else for
I'd
discussion?
like to say, I'm a historian, and I study these things.
If you were a lovely.
Now, your names are going to be on the record as having supported this, okay? And my students will be studying this, and we'll see what you've done.
I'd like to speak.
Motion to adjourn.
There's an item on the agenda I'd like to speak on. Thank you. Good evening once again, members of the planning board. Thank you to the two who took the right vote.
Thank you.
I just want to follow up on the issue with Robert Wood Johnson and the violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act and the violation of this board's resolution from 2002 and 2004. I have gotten, thanks to Mr. Dominguez, a letter. Right. So I got a letter from Rutgers that said they're going to, make an application to, I guess, get permission to make their law-breaking legal. Can you give me an update on what their plan is to actually, are they going to actually honor the pedestrian walkway they promised to do?
I only have the letter that you have. I know that they're going to at some point submit an amendment to their resolution. It'll probably go through the regular TAC process, so we're probably looking at it TAC in April if everything goes right, and we'll probably have them before this board in May, maybe June, to have that addressed. I don't know what the specific amendments that they're proposing are, but that's their current stance right now.
Okay, well, I would urge the board to hold them accountable for everything they promised us 18 years ago. They shouldn't be able to get away with not delivering on their promises, and it doesn't bode well when they're promising something so huge in exchange for taking something so big from our community. So I hope that they can actually start to follow their own promises, even if they have to go back in time to dig them up. Or maybe Danny and Katie can help me dig up those promises again, because it's just wrong what's been going on. People with disabilities and others have to walk a football field out of the way because Robert Wood Johnson and Rutgers can't be bothered to make good on things that they didn't just verbally say, things they swore to, things they promised to this board they would do in writing, and it's just wrong. We shouldn't be bending over backwards for those guys.
I will say that the three part of the ones that did vote yes, they are part of the city due to where